began with the vision of one man, a dream of one son, a son of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah, who sang a song whose words were written with the blood of our brothers and sisters sailed off to plantations, to white masters. A song whose rhythm and tune was hummed by the cries of our people. Feet shuffling, hands trembling, mouths begging. Won't you help us to sing this song of freedom? Uhuru. Freedom. Africa shall one day be free, he sang. Africans shall one day be free. His dream song spread like bushfire across the land, across the Great Nile, the Tanganyika, the Zambezi, from the north to the south, from the east to the west of the continent, right through Kingston, Harlem, the Caribbean. The strained tunes of his sweet song became a spell. Viva Africa, viva. Viva Africa, viva. Viva Africa, viva. Its spirit haunted Edward Wilmot, Anne Julia Cooper, Ella D. Barria, W.E. Du Bois, Muammar Gaddafi, His Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie, Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, Fela Kuti, Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, the fathers and mothers of Pan-Africanism. Viva Africa, viva. Viva Africa, viva. This song, even when its fathers and mothers were killed, haunted the lips of their sons and daughters. Viva Africa, viva. Viva Africa, viva. This was a song of pain. The pain of being black. The pain of being an African. The pain of being a native. The pain of being called uncivilized, uncultured, uneducated. The pain of being colonized by a fellow human being whose religion, traditions, language was no more superior than our own. Viva Africa, viva. Viva Africa, viva. They sang a song of strength, a song of unity, a song of liberation, Africa's liberation. Viva Africa, viva. like chains. Their weakness would be their greatest strength. Being black, being African. This song gave them a reason to unite, to fight, to think as one people, as one nation. Viva Africa, viva. Viva Africa, viva. Viva Africa, viva. This song was a cry of a united Africa, an empowered Africa, a rich Africa. Viva Africa, viva. Viva Africa, viva. Viva Africa, viva. Umoja, baraka, fanaka, biashara. I too sing that song today. We too sing that song today. Won't you help me sing that song? Won't you help me sing that song? Great. Viva Africa, viva. Viva Africa, viva. Viva Africa, viva. Viva Africa, viva. Let's continue. As I say, umoja, Africa, viva. Viva Africa, viva. Umoja. Baraka. Biashara. Uhuru. Umoja. Uhuru. Thank you.
Viva Africa. Viva Africa. Wow, what a beautiful and powerful way to start off our event. Please put your hands together one more time for Ms. Njeri Wangari for the outstanding performance. Asante Sana. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure and honor that I welcome you to the Intra-Africa Trade Fair 2023 Kenya High-Level Roadshow ahead of the Intra-Africa Trade Fair happening in November in Cairo. The theme for this roadshow is Unlocking the African Continental Free Trade Area Advantage in Kenya, Seizing Opportunities for Economic Growth and Prosperity. My name is Vivian Onano. I'm the founder and director of the Leading Light Initiative. I'm thrilled to participate at this high-level meeting, and I can see so many friends in the room, so karibu sana. By show of hands, how many entrepreneurs do you have in the room? Social entrepreneurs, amazing. Captains of industries, we're taking roll call, you know. Government officials. Okay, we need more government officials in the room. Creatives, farmers, business owners, and everyone else. You're all invited. It's impressive to see how diverse we are in this room and to see many young people in the audience. This is a great testament that the trade and investment space is opening up and more young people are engaging the space to learn and maximize on the economic opportunities. This roadshow positions itself as a multi-stakeholder platform to engage and exchange on trade matters. This includes, but not limited to, government, captains of industry, and the private sector. To be more specific, we have in the audience Mr. Dennis Denya, Executive Vice President, Finance, Administration, and Banking Services at AfCTFA. Welcome, sir. We also have Mr. Alfred Ombudo, Principal Secretary, State Department for Trade, Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry, Republic of Kenya. Welcome. We also have His Excellency Wael Atia, Ambassador of the Arab Republic of Kenya, Arab Republic of Egypt to Kenya. Thank you, sorry about that. And then we have Mr. Jaswinder Betty, Chairperson, Board of Directors, Kenya Private Sector Alliance, and Kenya Export Promotion and Branding Agency. Thank you, sir. We have Mr. Ashit Shah, Chairman, Kenya Association on Manufacturing, Automotive Sector, and Chairman, Automotive Parts Manufacturing Association. Thank you. We also have Ms. Flora Mutahi, Chief Executive, Melvin Stee. Good to have you. Last but not least, we also have Ms. Akinyi Odongo, Executive Board Chairperson, Kenya Fashion Council. Oh, good to have you. I'm excited and looking forward to hearing from all of them. I'll be taking notes too, because our speakers bring with them a diverse wealth of knowledge and experience from various industries. There is no doubt that Kenya has much to gain from the African Continental Free Trade Area, from trade growth, economic development, industrialization and diversification, substantial employment creation, and so much more. The government of Kenya is focused on increasing the share of manufacturing sector's contribution to GDP from 7% to 20% in the next 10 years, share of exports to GDP to 30% from the current levels of 10%, and increasing foreign direct investments from $500 million annually to $10 billion. Very ambitious. The Honorable Moses Kuria, Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Investment, Trade and Industry, has been vocal on the importance of promoting regional and inter-Africa trade. This event today is your event, so please make it as interactive as possible by asking questions and keep tweeting using the hashtag IATF2023 and hashtag Kenya, because they need to know it's happening in Kenya. As always, at such events, I need to inform you briefly about housekeeping matters. As a courtesy to everyone, please ensure that your mobile phone is turned off or completely silent. Following the panel session, we'll be inviting questions from the audience. If you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand and then wait until I invite you to speak, and you're provided with a microphone by one of the event staff. It's a Q&A, so it's not a time for you to read your whole statement. So I'll be very strict on that one. So please announce your name and job title prior to asking your questions. Also, to make life easier for everyone, please, let's be courteous and address all speakers, presenters, and panelists as sir or madam. Above all, I urge you to join us in Cairo, Egypt from the 9th to 15th November for our continent's game-changing premier trade and investment event, the Intra-African Trade Fair 2023. So now we're going to have an introduction video. The African Exports-Imports Afreximbank, in collaboration with the African Union Commission and the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat, brings you the 3rd Intra-Africa Trade Fair 2023 to be hosted by the Arab Republic of Egypt in Cairo. Intra-Africa Trade Fair 2023 will provide a unique and valuable platform for businesses to access an integrated African market of over 1.3 billion people with a GDP of over 3.5 trillion US dollars created under the African Continental Free Trade Area. We'd like to urge you to consider registering today to attend the event taking place, again, from the 9th to the 15th of November in Cairo, Egypt. The video.
Join Africa's premier trade and investment event in Cairo, Egypt. IATF2023 is expected to attract over 1,600 exhibitors from more than 75 exhibiting countries and over 35,000 attendees, and is expected to generate up to $43 billion in trade and investment deals. IATF2023 will once again consist of a trade exhibition where countries, large corporates, as well as small and medium enterprises can set up pavilions and exhibition stands, which will enable them to customize their exhibition to fit reflect their unique requirements. This offers private and public entities opportunities to showcase their goods and services. Trade and Investment Forum, the 4-day conference, will feature leading African and international speakers and a variety of sessions dealing with African trade and investment issues. Specifically, the conference will feature dedicated sessions on trade and investment opportunities under the AfCTFA and will also include training workshops covering exporting, standards and marketing. Creative African Nexus platform will showcase Africa's creative economy in fashion, music, film, arts and crafts, sport, gastronomy and culinary arts. The CANEX program will include a Creative Africa Summit and dedicated creative industry exhibition, a B2B and B2G platform. The platform will provide opportunities for matchmaking, business exchanges and conclusion of business and investment deals. This is supported by a dedicated African Buyers Program. Country Days has sponsorship opportunities and is open to 4 countries. It presents a platform for the 4 selected countries to showcase their trade, investment, tourism and cultural opportunities. IATF Virtual. This platform showcases goods, services and investment opportunities on an interactive online platform. The IATF Virtual is currently live and will continue even after the physical trade fair has ended. The Africa Automotive Show will present a platform for auto manufacturers, assemblers, original equipment manufacturers and component suppliers to exhibit their products and also interact with potential buyers and suppliers. It consists of an auto forum, auto show, and B2B and B2G exchanges. The AU Youth Startup Program will have a dedicated pavilion for youth startups in Africa where they will showcase their innovative ideas, prototypes, goods and services. The IATF will provide opportunities for matchmaking with venture capitalists, entrepreneurship training, networking among the youth and other delegates at the trade fair. The IATF2023 Diaspora Day will highlight commercial and cultural ties between Africa and its diaspora, featuring a diaspora summit, market and exhibition, cultural and gastronomic showcase. IATF2023 will provide a unique and valuable platform for businesses to access an integrated African market of over 1.3 billion people with a GDP of over $3.5 trillion US, created under the African Continental Free Trade Area. The African Export-Import Bank, African Union Commission, AfCTFA Secretariat, and the Arab Republic of Egypt invite you to join us from the 9th to the 15th of November at IATF 2023 in Cairo, Egypt. Intra-African Trade Fair, connecting African markets. For more information, visit www.intraafricantradefair.com.
I hope that video whets your appetite to register to attend this year's Intra-African Trade Fair in Egypt. I've already registered. So I think you've seen if you can't make it in person, you can still participate virtually, so it's very inclusive. For our opening remarks, please, I would like to welcome on stage Mr. Dennis Denya, Executive Vice President, Finance, Administration and Banking Services at AfroEximbank. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Madam Program Director, and good morning. Mr. Alfred Kumondo, Permanent Secretary, Trade, Ministry of Trade, Investment and Industry. His Excellency Waele Atia, Ambassador of the Arab Republic of Egypt to Kenya. Mr. Jeswinda Bedi, Chairperson, Board of Directors, Kenya Private Sector Alliance, and Kenya Export Promotion and Branding Agency, Executive Officer. Mr. Ashiti Shah, Chairman, Kenya Association of Manufacturing. Members of the diplomatic corps here present, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you all. It is my pleasure this morning to welcome you to this high-level business roadshow on Intra-Africa Trade Fair, holding under the theme leveraging on AfCTFA to drive economic growth and prosperity in Kenya. As you may be aware, the third edition of the Intra-Africa Trade Fair, IATF2023, will be held in the historic city of Cairo at the Egypt International Exhibition Center and Almanara International Conventional Center from the 9th to the 15th of November 2023. Today's roadshow seeks to provide the business community, including SMEs, women, youth, with important information on the IATF, its relevance to Africa's transformation and integration ambition. We aim to empower the people of Kenya with information on the IATF and serve as a rallying call for the full participation of the Kenyan business community during the IATF 2023. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by providing the context in which we, as AfCTFA, conceived and championed the Intra-Africa Trade Fair. Some of you will recall that it was during the inaugural conference of independent African states way back in 1963 that the visionary founding fathers of the African Union acknowledged the pivotal role of trade fairs and exhibitions in fostering trade amongst African nations. Following that mandate in 1963, the first All-Africa Trade Fair was orchestrated here in Kenya in 1972 under the auspices of the Organization of African Unity. However, the continuity of the All-Africa Trade Fair was hindered by various factors, including the absence of continental institutions to provide the necessary support for the trade fair. However, in 1993, a continental financial institution was established to promote and finance trade, especially intra-Africa trade. In pursuance of this mandate, AfCTFA, working with the AU Commission, decided to resuscitate the All-Africa Trade Fair, now branded as the Intra-Africa Trade Fair, and held the inaugural fair in Cairo in 2018. Ladies and gentlemen, you may also recall that in 2013, African heads of states and government adopted Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, as a blueprint for transforming the continent into an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa, driven by its own citizens, representing a dynamic force in the international arena. The establishment of the African Continental Free Trade Area, aimed at stimulating intra-Africa trade and advance economic integration, is amongst the first flagship projects under Agenda 2063. This historical agreement establishing the FCT was signed in 2018, came into force in 2019, and trading under this protocol started in 2021. Following its establishment, the FCTA Secretariat joined the AfCTFA and the AU Commission in promoting the IATF, and consequently the second edition of the trade fair was organized by these three parties. The resoundingly successful inaugural trade fair held in Cairo in 2018 was followed by an even more successful one in 2021, hosted by South Africa in Durban. Just to give you some statistics, the inaugural trade fair saw 1,000 exhibitors and more than 7,000 visitors from 45 countries, and deals worth over $32 billion were struck. IATF 2021 saw an improvement on this, with exhibitors amounting to 1,500 and visitors exceeding 35,000, of which 13,000 physically attended, and deals of over 42 billion were executed. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for Africa to take her destiny into her own hands and determine her own development agenda. However, to do so will not be easy and requires commitment, courage, and deliberate action from all of us. Traders need to seek out new market opportunities on the continent rather than the current conventional route of turning to markets abroad. Our political leadership need to open their markets and ensure that the AfCTFA is given full legal and operational effect in their countries. Our financial institutions will need to hold and support intra-Africa trade and investment in spite of the perceived risks. We at AfCTFA are proud to be contributing to this positive history of African economic integration and development. AfCTFA is at the forefront of supporting the AfCTFA and has developed several financing and facilitation instruments to support intra-Africa trade. You will hear more about this morning. Between 2017 and 2021, AfCTFA disbursed $20 billion in support of intra-Africa trade. And we plan to double this to $40 billion by 2026. Kenya is the largest economy in East Africa and has a vital leadership role to promote intra-Africa trade and investment, and is well positioned for production and service distribution to expand its African trade footprint. Over a couple of years, AfCTFA has provided financial support and facilitated the pooling of financial resources into the Kenyan economy worth billions of dollars. As an example, we provided $2 billion to Kenyan Airways for aircraft procurement. Recently, we announced a $3 billion country program, which will include the support to the country for the National Development Program through the development of industrial parks to improve manufacturing and value addition in local raw materials. For example, the Dongo Kud Special Economic Zones. It also includes financing of the creative sector, amongst others. Ladies and gentlemen, Kenya has benefited directly from the trade fair. For example, in 2018, deals worth $100 million were struck. In 2021, deals amounting to $775 million were struck, of which $162 million are fully implemented. AfCTFA has developed practical interventions to facilitate intra-Africa trade and investment under the AfCTFA. In June of this year, during our annual general meeting in Accra, Ghana, we unveiled the Africa Trade Gateway, which is a digital ecosystem to facilitate intra-Africa trade. The ATG includes the Pan-African Payments and Settlement System, which we call PAPS, which will allow African countries to trade amongst themselves using their own local currency, and we settle the net difference, which means a Kenyan importing from Egypt will pay in Kenyan shillings, and the Egyptian exporter will get his proceeds in Egyptian pounds, which will limit the need for third-party currencies in intra-African trade. Let me, at this point, express our gratitude to His Excellency William Ruto, the President of the Republic of Kenya, for his strong support in promoting PAPS. This morning, we therefore call upon the government of Kenya, the business community, to take advantage of the IATF2023 and come to Cairo to exhibit your products and your capabilities so you can access new clients and new markets. In conclusion, let me reiterate that as AfCTFA, we stand firm in our commitment to supporting intra-Africa trade and investment. And in so doing, we are ready to support you, the people of Kenya, the business community, and the government with adequate resources, both financial and non-financial, to not only adapt to a world of continued turbulence, but to also thrive under the new business environment created by the AfCTFA. I invite you all to join us at the IATF2023 as exhibitors, as sponsors, even as buyers, as we work together to realize the vision of an integrated and prosperous Africa. I'm optimistic that Kenya will be strongly represented. I look forward to seeing you in Cairo. Thank you.
Put your hands together one more time for Mr. Dennis Denya. Thank you for that broad and informative overview of the Intra-African Trade Fair 2023 and the opportunities that it presents for all of us. I mean, the numbers speak for itself. And thank you for reminding us that we need the commitment, courage, and deliberate action for us to harness the full potential on our continent, Africa. So next, I'd like to invite our keynote speaker, Mr. Alfred Ombudo, Principal Secretary, State Department for Trade, Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry, Republic of Kenya. So the floor is yours.
Morning, everybody. How are you today? Are you bright, up, and early? Very good. My name is Alfred Ombudo. I'm Principal Secretary for Trade in the Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry. We are very happy to be here today because AfriEximBank is a key partner in our development objectives. AfriEximBank has also opened up a Kenya program, which we are already utilizing. But most importantly is that AfriEximBank also represents what we consider to be dealing with some of the frontier issues that we need to handle if intra-African trade is really going to thrive. Right from financial products, right from dealing with issues concerning trade facilitation, and also looking at issues that connect to the capability of African countries to provide the supply that is necessary to get into international markets. So this is a partnership that we are very, very pleased to be part of and to support. But I think most importantly is for our exporting private sector. What we are trying to do is to support your efforts and to support your capability, not just to supply, but to supply and participate in international trade at very competitive terms. We are also pleased today that we have the Egyptian ambassador with us, who is going to host the trade fair in Cairo, and we look forward to a very engaging partnership. I'm here to read the remarks on behalf of the Cabinet Secretary for Investment, Trade and Industry, Honorable Moses Kuria, who is in Kakamega today with His Excellency the President, as they are launching one of the county aggregation and investment parks, one of our key instruments important for us to be able to have supply capacity in international markets. Mr. Daines Denya, Executive Vice President of AfriEximBank, Ambassador Khaled El Abyad, Ambassador to the Embassy of the Arab Republic of Egypt to Kenya, to the Chair of KEPROBA, Jaswinda Bedi, and also to Flora Mutahi, who is representing the private sector. We also have several of our CEOs within the State Department of Trade, Pamela Mutua of the Kenya National Trading Corporation, and Flois Mukabana of KEPROBA, which is the Kenya Export Promotion and Branding Agency. And most importantly, to all our guests here and the private sector, you're most welcome. From the outset, let me thank AfriEximBank for inviting me to this roadshow that marks an important milestone towards actualizing Inter-African Trade Fair 2023. We also thank the Kenya Export Promotion and Branding Agency and other stakeholders for bringing together the business community to participate in this roadshow. Seeing you all in this room this morning is a clear demonstration of your continued commitment and thirst to participate in international markets, and we commend you for that. This roadshow is extremely important. We believe that it not only represents a chance to engage the business community out there, but it will also deepen our understanding of how to conclude transactions, how to do the business-to-business activities, to create that initial interaction that enables you to actually take those into contract stage. That's the most important thing. We want to see deals signed as a basis of this trade fair, and as His Excellency, the Vice President has said of AfriEximbank, a number of deals were already done in your prior edition, and we look forward to this number going up. And let me turn my attention to intra-African trade. This in Africa is less than 15% of Africa's total trade, in comparison to much higher numbers in other continents. But the good news is that this trade is on the rise, and the AfCTFA is playing a key role in modernizing, industrializing, and being an influential player in as far as advancing African trade. If we are to make sure that African trade continues to grow, industrialization becomes a key aspect of this, and that is what is now going to improve our supply capacity to get into other African markets. African Continental Free Trade Area is more than just eliminating tariffs and simplifying customs procedures. One of my colleagues in a previous multilateral institution that I used to work for always talks about thick borders. So the African Continental Free Trade Area is not just about bringing down tariffs. If anything, over the last 30 or so years, tariffs are going down generally across the world. So if you want to trade internationally, it's not just about bringing down tariffs, but it's about dealing with borders. It's about dealing with transport logistics. It's about dealing with the shipping industry. It's about making sure that your goods are able to arrive competitively. It's about ensuring that you're able to package your goods according to the requirements of the foreign market. It's about making sure that you're able to comply with the requirements in sanitary, phytosanitary, and all of those issues. And these are long-standing, long-term industrial issues that we hope to work with you and with partners like AfriEximbank to be able to deal with. Kenya is a key supporter of the AfCTFA. And to show this commitment, Kenya, alongside Ghana, was one of the first countries to ratify and deposit instruments of ratification. We did this on the 10th of May 2018. So Kenya is one of the countries that's part of the Guided Trade Initiative. I believe that's about 8 countries that are currently participating in this trade. And we really look forward to being able to utilize this and to have many more items that are traded under the Guided Trade Initiative. But most importantly, we want all African countries to be able to be part of this trade in reality. Since the launch of this initiative, Kenya has exported value-added tea. I think exports to Ghana are on the up. We wish that those exports could arrive there faster because these are some of the issues also still connected to the type of trade logistics and shipping and all those kind of things that hopefully we'll be able to address a bit better in as far as advancing inter-African trade. But at least there's light at the end of the tunnel, and we are seeing an uptick in as far as the participation, not just of Kenya, but of all African countries in as far as the trading under the AfCTFA is concerned. And perhaps for the most important part of my speech today is that the African Trade Fair 2023, scheduled to take place in Cairo from the 9th to 15th November, is an extremely important avenue for the African business community, Kenya included, to be able to establish continental networks, business contacts, and to make it easier to export to the rest of the continent. I therefore urge the private sector to move with speed, with zeal, with determination, with courage, with singular focus, with alacrity, to ensure that you are able to prepare well for this event and to ensure that you are able to not just attend, but to seal deals when you're at it. The IATF accords us an opportunity to grow the numbers of our trade, And as a country, we have given ourselves a target to grow exports as a share of GDP from the current 10% to an even higher number, and which I believe we shall be able to do if we engage in initiatives such as this. Finally, allow me to follow up on a conversation, and now I'm speaking on behalf also of the CS, but I'll do it in first person, that I had with my friend, Mr. Dennis Denya, the Executive Vice President of AfCTFA in Cairo in February, about the need for the bank to double its efforts in supporting investments, trade, and industrial development in Kenya and the larger East African region. As a country, we have been very deliberate about making Kenya the hub for FDI, a source for good quality goods and services. And as part of this, we are doing an aggressive rollout of country aggregation and industrial parks across 47 counties as a way of promoting a value chain approach. And perhaps where I started the speech from was that the Cabinet Secretary this morning is launching the Kakamega County Aggregation and Industrial Park alongside His Excellency, the President, and that is why he could not be here this morning, but we continue this conversation nevertheless. I will leave it there, and as a bank, just to reiterate to AfCTFA that you have an opportunity to be part of Kenya's economic transformation by supporting our efforts to develop relevant infrastructure, including warehousing facilities, supporting aggregation, value addition, packaging of goods, both for local and export markets. I thank you all for your kind attention. Asanteni sana.
Round of applause for Mr. Ombudo. Thank you so much for the insightful keynote remarks. Viva Africa, viva! Viva Africa, viva! Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, something that I wanted to note. I know that in 2018, they held the first Intra-Africa Trade Fair in Egypt, and it's going back to Egypt this year again. Your Excellency, next year we'll have to take it from you. It will be hosted in Kenya. So now we're going to have a health break, but before that, we're going to have our photo session. So the first one will be the speakers. So Mr. Dennis Denya, Mr. Ombudo, His Excellency, and then we'll have Dr. Gainmore, please. And then the second one, we'll have the speakers on the panel, so all the panelists plus the CEOs from the Ministry of Trade, please. And then the last one, we'll just have the panelists alone. So for the rest of you, you may please enjoy some snacks for 15 minutes, and then we'll be back here at, right now it's 11:05. We'll be back here right at 11:20. Please be back and seated, and your phone silent. Thank you.
It's a new beginning, higher grounds we're lifting off. Nothing holds us bound. Can you see it? The light of Africa is rising to higher grounds. We're lifting off. Nothing holds us bound. So come on and come on. We call on, oh Africa, come let us build a dream for all. Together we grow stronger and united. Paint out the sky with the bright colors of your flags and say goodbye to the darkness of the past. We're stepping forward, we're rising up. Oh Africa, our time is now. Break down the chains, clear the lines that separate, and shine the light on the things that make us great. We're stepping forward, we're rising up. Oh Africa, our time is now. Oh, oh, oh. Africa, we are strong. One nation to another. See now we stand as one to celebrate our victory, which is the glory of the motherland. And nothing holds us bound. So come on and come on. We call on, oh Africa, come let us build a dream for all. Forever we grow stronger and united. Paint out the sky with the bright colors of your flags and say goodbye to the darkness of the past. We're stepping forward, we're rising up. Oh Africa, our time is now. Break down the chains, clear the lines that separate, and shine the light on the things that make us great. We're stepping forward, we're rising up. Oh Africa, our time is now. Oh, 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 Africa. Oh, 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 It's a new day. It's a new beginning. Higher ground, willing to know nothing moves us back. It's a new day. It's a new beginning. Higher grounds, we're lifting off. Nothing holds us bound. Can you see it? The light of Africa is rising to higher grounds. We're lifting off. Nothing holds us bound. So come on and come on. We call on, oh Africa, come let us build a dream for all. Together we grow stronger and united. Paint out the sky with the bright colors of your flags and say goodbye to the darkness of the past. We're stepping forward, we're rising up. Oh Africa, our time is now. Break down the chains, clear the lines that separate, and shine the light on the things that make us great. We're stepping forward, we're rising up. Oh Africa, our time is now. Oh, 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 yeah. We know we got that power. Africa, we are strong. One nation to another. See now we stand as one to celebrate our victory, which is the glory of the motherland. And nothing holds us bound. So come on and come on. We call on, oh Africa, come let us build a dream for all. Forever we grow stronger and united. Paint out the sky with the bright colors of your flags and say goodbye to the darkness of the past. We're stepping forward, we're rising up. Oh, Africa, our time is now. Break down the chains, clear the lines that separate, and shine the light on the things that make us great. We're stepping forward, we're rising up. Oh, Africa, our time is now. Oh, 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 Africa. It's a new day. It's a new beginning. Higher ground, we're lifting up. Nothing holds us back. It's a new day. It's a new beginning. Higher grounds, we're lifting up. Nothing holds us bound. Can you see it? The light of Africa is rising to higher grounds. We're lifting up. Nothing holds us bound. So come on and come on. We call on, oh Africa, come let us build a dream for all. Together we grow stronger and united. Paint out the sky with the bright colors of your flags and say goodbye to the darkness of the past. We're stepping forward, we're rising up. Oh, Africa, our time is now. Break down the chains, clear the lines that separate, and shine the light on the things that make us great. We're stepping forward, we're rising up. Oh, Africa, our time is now. Oh, 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 yeah. We know we got that power. Africa, we are strong. One nation to another. See now we stand as one to celebrate our victory, riches and glory of the motherland. And nothing holds us bound. So come on and come on. We call on, oh Africa, come let us build a dream for all. Forever we grow stronger and united. Paint out the sky with the bright colors of your flags and say goodbye to the darkness of the past. We're stepping forward, we're rising up. Oh, Africa, our time is now. Break down the chains, clear the lines that separate, and shine the light on the things that make us great. We're stepping forward, we're rising up. Oh, Africa, our time is now. Oh, 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 Africa. Oh, 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 It's a new day. It's a new beginning. Higher grounds we're lifting off. Nothing holds us bound. Can you see it? The light of Africa is rising to higher grounds. We're lifting off. Nothing holds us bound. So come on and come on. We call on, oh Africa, come let us build a dream for all. Together we grow stronger and united. Paint out the sky with the bright colors of your flags and say goodbye to the darkness of the past. We're stepping forward, we're rising up. Oh Africa, our time is now. Break down the chains, clear the lines that separate, and shine a light on the things that make us great. We're stepping forward, we're rising up. Oh Africa, our time is now. Oh, 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 yeah. We know we got that power. Africa, we are strong. One nation to another. See now we stand as one to celebrate our victory, which is the glory of the motherland. And nothing holds us bound. So come on and come on. We call on, oh Africa, come let us build a dream for all. Forever we grow stronger and united. Paint out the sky with the bright colors of your flags and say goodbye to the darkness of the past. We're stepping forward, we're rising up. Oh Africa, our time is now. Break down the chains, clear the lines that separate, and shine a light on the things that make us great. We're stepping forward, we're rising up. Oh Africa, our time is now. Oh, 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 Africa. It's a new day. It's a new beginning. Higher ground we're lifting off. Nothing holds us bound. Can you see it? The light of Africa is rising to higher grounds. We're lifting off. Nothing holds us bound. So come on and come on. We call on, oh Africa, come let us build a dream Paint out the sky with the bright colors of your flags and say goodbye to the darkness of the past. We're stepping forward, we're rising up. Oh, Africa, our time is now. Break down the chains, clear the lines that separate, and shine the light on the things that make us great. We're stepping forward, we're rising up. Oh, Africa, our time is now. Oh, 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 yeah. We know we got that power. Africa, we are strong. One nation to another. See now we stand as one to celebrate our victory, which is the glory of the motherland. And nothing holds us bound. So come on and come on. We call on, oh Africa, come let us build a dream for all. Forever we grow stronger and united. Paint out the sky with the bright colors of your flags and say goodbye to the darkness of the past. We're stepping forward, we're rising up. Oh, Africa, our time is now. Break down the chains, clear the lines that separate, and shine the light on the things that make us great. We're stepping forward, we're rising up. Oh, Africa, our time is now. Oh, 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 oh,
Hello. Good morning, good people. I think it's time we all made our way back in. So you can take your cups of teas and coffees with you. Hello, everyone. You are doing very well. Can I kindly ask you to make your way back in? You can take with you your cups of coffees and teas. I know. Hello, everyone. I get a horrible job. Make your way inside, everyone. You can even take your food with you.
I take my cup.
Yes, take your cup. I'll get people to clear the cups. Take your cups. Everyone get in. It's time to get back in. You're allowed to take your cups with you. It's time to get back in. You can bring your food with you as well. Yes. It's time to get back in. It's time to get back in. Bring your cups. You have to. Get in. Every one of you, time to get back in. It's time to get back in.
Stepping forward, we're rising up. Oh, Africa, our time is now. Break down the chains, clear the lines that separate, and shine the light on the things that make us great. We're stepping forward, we're rising up. Oh, Africa, our time is now. Oh, 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 oh,
Viva Africa, viva! Viva Africa, viva! I hope you had a wonderful break, and Those who are still outside, please come in. Turn off your phones. No music in between the sessions. So we're going on to our next session of today's event. And sorry, let's please sit down. So you heard from the Executive Vice President on the importance of the creative industry and the work that the Intra-Africa Trade Fair is doing to showcase creatives across the continent. So our next session is also to show the creatives from Kenya, made in Kenya. So the Creative Arts Nexus. The time is now for creatives to bring that inspirational spark back into the physical realm and to start benefiting once more from their immense talent. AfCTFA has identified the creative sector in Africa as a unique space of opportunity for employment, massive economic growth, and poverty alleviation, especially for Africa's massive youth demographic. The Creative Africa Nexus, or CANEX, is the rubric under which all of AfCTFA creative industry, financial mentorship and development initiatives is housed. CANEX is about the business of the creative industries. It is about finding sustainable and scalable solutions for African creatives, both established and emerging. CANEX is a huge opportunity taking place in our country and an opportunity to restart and reimagine financially viable way forward for African creatives after 2 years of near total economic devastation. It is free for all delegates to attend CANEX and to take part in the sessions, masterclasses, and networking opportunities. CANEX at the Intra-African Trade Fair 2023 is truly an event not to be missed for any creative from any sector who is serious about the long-term career within the existing space. We look forward to seeing you at the event in November. So to showcase our creative, made in Kenya, I'd like to invite on stage Ms. Sharon Liboi, Kenyan singer and songwriter. The stage is yours, Ms. Sharon.
Now
Another big round of applause for Ms. Sharon. Just wow. Mr. Dennis, made it in Kenya, we take it to Cairo. Thank you so much. And next, I would like to welcome on stage Dr. Gainmo Zanamwe, Director, Trade Facilitation and IATF at the African Export-Import Bank, AfCTFA. The floor is yours, sir.
Well, thank you very much, moderator, and Your Excellencies. I think it's a pleasure to have you, EVP, and everybody. I think we should have just allowed this thing to continue and then have fun. So the scene has been set. I think what I want to do now is to walk you through some of the products that we have at AfCTFA to support the business people who are in this room, including the SMEs, including women, youth. At AfCTFA, we actually pride ourselves as the trade and project finance supermarket. So we have everything that you need. You just need to walk into the supermarket with your basket and make sure that when you walk out, the basket is full of something. So I will now quickly go through the presentation. I'll be skipping most of the issues. I prepared the slides so that I can leave them with you to read, but I'll be focusing on very few things that I think you may probably need to focus on to prepare for the trade fair. This is basically about the bank and our financial highlights. You can read about it. And this slide is basically telling you that at AfCTFA, we are sick and tired of having our natural resources being produced and exported to faraway lands without adding value. So what we've actually done is to throw in our financial muscle, and we are now focusing on promoting industrialization and export development. This is at the core of our 6th strategic plan. And we are also promoting intra-African trade. You heard from the previous speakers that intra-African trade is very low. Why is it very low? At AfCTFA, we are basically saying this is not acceptable. We have to start with Kenya and Egypt. You need to start trading with each other and trade more. So at AfCTFA, we've basically made the promotion of intra-African trade the first pillar of our strategy and the implementation of the AfCTFA. So that's basically the main focus that we have in terms of our strategy. And you will see it throughout the presentation. So what I want to do now is to highlight a few trade facilitation and financing instruments that we have developed to try and support the business people to be able to actually trade with each other
I will basically focus on some of the facilitation initiatives first, then go to the financing, and my brother Kuda will be on the panel, will also give you more information about the financing instruments. So, as I highlighted, intra-African trade is very low, and one of the reasons is that we don't know each other. And if we don't know each other, we cannot trust each other. If we cannot trust each other, we cannot trade with each other. And this is the main reason why intra-African trade is around 16%. And with the entry now into force of the AfCTFA, we believe that it is now time to change that and ensure that we boost intra-African trade. So at Afreximbank, we didn't just sit idle and say there is now an AfCTFA is going to be implemented. We actually have been relentless in our support. We took it upon ourselves to say, if the AfCTFA fails, we would have failed. So we had to actually lead to support the AfCTFA Secretariat and the business people to be able to trade. So I will now highlight some of the interventions that we've put in place to support the AfCTFA. So some of you already know that the AfCTFA has got enormous benefits. I will not go into that, and it will actually play a vital role in terms of even lifting women from poverty. And we are talking about more than 400 billion in terms of income. World Bank, UNECA, all the studies are clear. But what is it that is stopping Kenyans from grabbing the opportunity? These are some of the things that we'll be discussing today, and we'll be sharing with you some of the support that we'll be providing to you to benefit from some of those billions that are on paper. How do we make those billions translate to the people in the creative, the fashion, people in the automotive sector, people in agriculture? So the AfCTFA has made it very clear that there are going to be benefits in the agricultural sector. How do we then tap into those benefits? How do we realize those opportunities? There are going to be a lot of opportunities in terms of manufacturing, in terms of value addition, in terms of services, tourism. So these are some of the opportunities that have been identified by the AfCTFA, and we are here to work with you to ensure that those benefits or opportunities are actually realized. One of the instruments that we've put in place is the AfCTFA Adjustment Fund. It's a 10 billion facility that is going to help both the government, especially the state parties, to deal with tariff revenue loss, to enable the state parties to continue liberalizing. They say that free trade is like a bicycle. You need to keep on cycling. So we don't want the member states to stop. If you stop, you'll fall. I hope Kenya is also noting. And for the private sector, we also want the private sector now to focus on developing regional value chains in agro-processing, whether it's in dairy, whether it's in your tea, whether it's in coffee, whether it's in any products like the automotive industry. We really need to focus more on promoting those value chains. And the adjustment fund, the credit fund, which is the private sector component of the adjustment fund, will also enable you to do that. It will also address the infrastructure challenges. Trade enabling infrastructure is one of the challenges that is affecting intra-African trade. Industrialization, we have put it at the heart of this adjustment fund. We want to promote industrialization, regional value chain, so that the business people, the manufacturers, they have access to the funding they need to be able to produce goods that we can trade under the AfCTFA. The AfCTFA is not going to be a platform to trade in our minerals, our natural resources. We actually need to do more value addition so that we've got products that we can trade amongst ourselves. And the bank has already committed $1 billion US dollars to the adjustment fund. The other facility that I'll talk about, I'll basically skip some of these slides, is the Africa Trade Gateway that our Vice President has talked about. But what I want to do is to actually help you put it in a practical context. So what we've done is we've developed this digital platform working with the AfCTFA Secretariat. We believe that the future, which is already now, is going to be digital. Somebody also told me that it's also going to be female, but I'm still researching on that one. But the platform, what it does, it helps you to actually use artificial intelligence, to use technology to be able to solve some of the problems that we have. It helps you to break down the barriers that we have, reduce the transaction costs. So imagine a trader of tea sitting here in Kenya. You want to know, out of the 55 African countries, where can you take your tea? I know Egyptians, they love tea. They are always drinking tea. Even when they were building pyramids, I'm told they were drinking tea. So we have covered Egypt market already. But where else, aside from Egypt, can you take your tea? You go to the trader club, where we have what we call the trade intelligence platform. That trade intelligence platform will actually use artificial intelligence to zoom throughout the 55 African countries. And they can actually show you that aside from Egypt, Nigeria is also another big consumer of tea. Just imagine if you were to take either your Kericho tea or all your other teas just to Nigeria, you can actually open an airline route just taking the tea. So these are some of the things that we are actually exploring. You can go on the trader intelligence and get this kind of information. And it also predicts supply chains. It can map all the supply chain and give you the information as a trader, as an SME, as a manufacturer, so that you can even boost your manufacturing capacity. You can also access the same information on our Africa Trade Exchange, ATEX. So you can start from there to look for market, and market opportunities is the starting point. Once you discover your market in, let's say, Egypt or Nigeria, you'll be interested in knowing, okay, who is the potential buyer in, let's say, Nigeria? And some of you are always suspicious. When you hear the name Nigeria, you say, am I going to get my money from Nigeria? Yes, you will. With the platform we have, we've got Mansa, which is a KYC due diligence. You can actually go on that due diligence platform. You'll get all the information about the Nigerian. That's the trust that I was talking about. You can see all the information with there. So once you have established that trust, you'll actually now be able to go to the next stage. If you want to export your tea to Nigeria, what are the regulations? What are the rules that you need to know about? You go to trader regulations. It will give you that information to say your tea must meet these requirements in terms of standards. All the information will be available, the tariffs that you need to pay, the rules of origin. As long as it grows onto the mountains, it qualifies to go to Nigeria. Then once you've crossed that bridge, you will now be saying, okay, how do I get paid? You go to the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System that my Vice President talked about. We want to use African currencies to facilitate intra-African trade. So we already have everything covered, and your president has been the greatest champion of this Pan-African payment and settlement solution that we have. So in a practical sense, this is basically how the Africa Trade Gateway works, and we hope that Kenya will be able to subscribe to Mansa. We already have more than 11,000 institutions that have already subscribed in the continent, and we hope that Kenya will continue subscribing to Mansa. You can also join our trader club to access all the market intelligence that I was talking about. You can also access the regulations there, and we have also been working with Kenya and other countries in Africa to actually join PAPS, which has been endorsed by the AU heads of states. So I now want to also talk about another important thing. I think it's one thing to have the AfCTFA, which is a very big market. It's 1.4 billion. But the challenge is always, how do you get goods moving within Africa? It's a major challenge. We have to admit, where there are challenges, we need to actually identify them and then find ways of addressing them. One of the challenges is in the area of transit. Try to move from one border to the next. You are always stopped at the border, and I don't know what these security officers sometimes will be looking for. And it's a nightmare if you are trying to actually move from one African border to another. Let me probably just zoom in so that you see the extent of the borders that we have. By the way, those borders were not created by Africans, so that's another challenge that we are still trying to deal with. So try to move from Cape Town to Cairo driving a truck. You'll be stopped at each and every border. They'll ask you to post a transit bond. And if you come across some of the overzealous police officers, they'll even ask you about the number of teeth in your mouth. If you don't answer correctly, you may not cross. So these are some of the challenges we are seeing. And we said, to address some of these challenges, why don't we create a single transit bond that is technology enabled, that can help you to move with your truck from Cape to Cairo with just one transit bond. It will cut all the delays. It will make the Cape to Cairo dream a reality. It will make the AfCTFA a reality. So this is the transit bond system that we are implementing. Even at the regional level, you want to move a truck from Kenya all the way to DRC. So you can basically apply the same single transit bond. It can be issued in Zambia or in DRC, but that should allow a truck to leave Mombasa and go all the way to DRC without being stopped and asked to post a bond at each and every border. If we actually implement this fully throughout the continent, we will be saving, as a bare minimum, about $300 million a year. And the savings could go even up to $1 billion. Then we would have actually made life easy for consumers and for the business people. And these transit charges, they actually add a lot of costs. If a truck spends a day at a border, that truck will be losing on average about $450 per day per truck. And we need to eliminate some of those costs that are not necessary. So we are already working with Kenya under the COMESA Transit Guarantee Scheme to issue bonds. There are a number of insurance companies in Kenya that have already asked us to support them, and we are now working with your insurance regulator to ensure that we issue the bonds. How we do it, it's not about displacing the local players in the market, but we partner with them, we give them capacity, and they will be able to issue bonds cheaply to the clearing and freight forwarders, to the SMEs, to the business people who need these transit bonds. So that's basically what we are trying to do. And we've had the issues about trade enabling infrastructure. Just imagine, I've been hearing about the discussions about aggregation in various counties. The studies we've done actually show that if you try to move agricultural products from a rural area to a warehouse, you are actually at every 10 kilometers, you lose 1% of the value of your products. So it's already a loss that is being incurred by a poor farmer. If you don't have access to warehouses, the loss it will actually jump to about 15%. So we are actually trying to ensure that we have this information to also support the smallholder farmers to be able to benefit from their trade. We also need to deal with the trade enabling infrastructure. Our roads, our railway lines, we don't even have railway lines that talk to each other. The gauges are different, and sometimes we believe in what our colonial masters taught us, and we are clinging on to that. We are not connecting with each other, and we are now working with some of our partners to implement the railway initiative to ensure that there are also roads, there are efficient ports, Even in the tracking system, a study that was done by UNECA shows that we need about 2 million trucks just to push trade under the AfCTFA. And that is worth more than $300 billion of investment business. Those who are in the automotive, you need to be manufacturing trucks here in Africa, not to be bringing them from elsewhere. So these are some of the things that we are actually trying to champion. Border markets, we are trying to also ensure that we build markets at the borders. One example is what we are doing between the border between South Africa and Zimbabwe. We call it the Zim border. It's an excellent trade facilitation tool. We've actually, based on that, done a strategy whereby we are now working throughout the continent to put in place similar structure that we call border markets to facilitate some of those young people and women that we see carrying stuff on their backs and trying to do trade, informal cross-border traders. We want to help them so that they can trade in a structured manner with good facilities. So these are some of the things that we are doing to try and support trade. The automotive strategy, I will not talk much about it, but I just want to highlight that this is another sector that we are also supporting, and I think Mr. Ashit is there. You will speak about that on the panel. And we are also supporting export trading companies. I want to also build on what the PS said, and when he talked about the things that they are doing in counties. We know that some of the smallholder farmers, SMEs, informal cross-border traders, they may not be able to trade on their own. They may not be able to actually maneuver some of the trade regulations and even understand some of the challenges with Forex and etc. So they are best supported by export trading companies that will do the aggregation of the products that they would have produced, and then they will take them to the market. Export trading companies will identify the best markets in Africa, globally. They will bring that market intelligence, give it to the farmers. The farmers will then produce, and then the export trading company will aggregate and take the products to the market. They can also provide financing, inputs, etc. So we are already working with the Ministry of Trade and Industry as well as KNTC to try and support Kenya to actually have a fully fledged export trading company that can support exports. So that's basically what I want to highlight. We have also done the training on how to export in Kenya. We are also providing support in terms of building the Africa Quality Assurance Centers. We are doing one in Mombasa, and one will be at the Nairobi airport to ensure that the goods that we have produced, they can actually be tested to ensure that they meet the standards. Most of the goods that you produce and try to send to Europe, they get rejected because they don't meet the standards. So as the bank, we are actually providing this support. What you see there is the center that we've already built in Nigeria, Ogun State, and we'll be replicating the same here in Kenya. We are also providing support on industrial parks. My vice president highlighted that, covering a number of products in terms of agriculture and other products. We also have got the project preparation facility. I know a number of you have got very good and brilliant ideas, but they are basically at the concept stage. They are not bankable. We can help you to take them to financial close, to make them bankable. These are some of the facilities that we have. Creatives, that's basically one of my favorite. When we started this, we actually started the first creative workshop under a tree in Ghana. And everybody was telling us that this will not go anywhere. But from there, we did our creative strategy. Right now, we are covering film, music, fashion, sports, arts, and craft. And I saw my sister who is in the creative. I think let's have a discussion. We've got a 1 billion facility for you, but we want to see what you have in your fashion, how best we can work with you to support you. And this will be a key highlight also at the IATF. It's now a major vertical that we have under the IATF. I'll skip the IATF-related stuff. It will be covered by my colleagues. Also on the finance, I think my vice president talked about the 40 billion that we are going to provide to facilitate intra-African trade. We also have the AfCTFA Trade Finance Facility, whereby we've basically been working with about 500 banks in Africa, and we are providing them with lines of credit to facilitate trade. And we've already done a lot under this. Our target is to actually do 8 billion, but so far we've already done more than 6 billion, and this is the finance that we are providing. There are a range of these other financial products. I will not go into them, but I just want to highlight the first one, which is the Global Facility for Intra-African Trade Champions, whereby we also work with big companies in Egypt, in Nigeria, and I want to also work with some of the big companies in Kenya, and we can take them to the other African countries. Once we do that, these big entities will also then bring in the SMEs, and we also have got a feeder initiative whereby we are requesting these big entities to also bring in the SMEs to be the suppliers of these big entities so that they also benefit from financial support. These are the other financial products that we have. We've got everything that you need. I'll basically skip them, and also we've got contract agriculture that I want to mention, which is also very relevant to Kenya. It also supports our export trading company initiative. It's more or less like contract farming, whereby the ETC or an anchor entity can go and engage farmers to produce particular products for a particular market. We can actually provide financing. We also provide contract and toll manufacturing support, franchising. There are a number of businesses in Kenya here that we can actually franchise and take to the other part of Africa. These are some of the instruments that we have. And these are all the other programs and facilities. I will not cover them in detail. I want to finish with the Fund for Export Development in Africa, which is basically our patient equity. I talked largely about the debt side of things, but this is also on the equity side of things. We can actually help the businesses that want to expand and do export production, manufacturing. We can actually give you equity through our subsidiary, FEDA, which is based in Rwanda, and we welcome all those with ideas who need support under this facility. So to conclude, I think you have heard it from the PS, from my Vice President, that all the roads are leading to Egypt, Cairo. But before we get there, the preparatory work has to start here in Nairobi. Not only Nairobi, but you have to extend it to the other counties. We want you to bring in all the 47 counties. You need to identify the business people in those counties, in various cities, give them information about all these products, about what will be happening. The $43 billion that we are doing in Egypt, we want Kenya to take a significant portion. So this is the challenge that we'll live with the government of Kenya and the private sector, and also with you, moderator. You need to drive moja. Asante sana.
Round of applause for Dr. Gainmore. Thank you so much for empowering us with that information, because as you said, we need information to build a trust for us to be able to trade with one another. And the information that you're sharing is not only for us here in the room, but also for those who are out there. So please, keep tweeting hashtag IATF2023, hashtag Kenya. They need to know it's happening in Nairobi. Now we're going to hear from Ms. Evashni Naidu, General Manager, Marketing, who will be letting us know more about the Intra-Africa Trade Fair, which is taking place in Cairo, Egypt, from the 9th to 15th November. Evashni, the stage is yours. Thanks.
Protocol observed. My name is Evashni Naidu. In order to fully realize Africa's economic potential, inter-African trade must be fostered. And the Inter-African Trade Fair is the multi-sectorial trade fair dedicated to do just that. with the goal of bringing together African buyers, sellers, investors. AfCTFA Bank initiated the Intra-African Trade Fair in 2018 in collaboration with the African Union Commission and the AfCTFA Secretariat. The third edition of the IATF will be held in Egypt from the 9th to the 15th of November. IATF promotes the establishment of the African Continental Free Trade Area for the AfCTFA's goals to be realized. Sustainable measures must be taken to close the gap in trade and the markets. Bringing together continental and international players interested in investing in Africa, as well as provide a platform for business opportunities, exploration between buyers and sellers. We facilitate commercial networking and the creation of new prospects between business and governments. Disseminate data on the inter-African trade, investment, and markets to help solve problems and promote growth. And to provide more information regarding AfCTFA Bank initiatives, trade finance, and trade facilitation interventions. So how do you become involved at IATF? Like our roadshows, which are streamed live on the IATF Virtual, you can also register an IATF Virtual booth, as well as attend as an IATF Virtual visitor, and take part of the event in our virtual platform. Book an exhibition booth and profit from networking with buyers and sellers. To avoid disappointment, book your stand today. Register to attend and participate in the 7-day program, and there's opportunity to register as a buyer if you meet the criteria. Or become a sponsor and join our partners who get the benefits of their affiliation with IATF. We provide businesses of all sizes with individualized sponsorship packages. Please do not hesitate to contact us for more information on sponsorship. Don't miss out the opportunity and chance to contribute to this discussion as we promote inter-African trade. We strongly suggest that you take advantage of this offer. If you have any questions, please contact us directly. We are happy to help. Our website is regularly updated with the latest information. Utilize our social media networks to stay abreast of the latest developments. Now, please go onto our social media networks, share our posts from today, and follow our pages. You can also scan the QR codes that were left on your seats for more information. And we look forward to seeing you in Cairo in November. Thank you. Asante sana.
Thank you again to Ms. Vashni. I hope we are all registering and getting ready to head to Cairo in November for the Intra-African Trade Fair 2023. So my panelists are getting mic'd. So now we are on to the next session, and this is where the meat is. We are going to hear from our panelists, and also this is the session where we expect to hear from you. So we expect lots of questions. So please get ready. So yeah, so now we are in for a treat. So please make sure you keep your notebook and pen close to you. Our panel session for this event is on seizing the Africa Continental Free Trade Area advantage, empowering manufacturers, exporters, investors, and relevant industry players. The Africa Continental Free Trade Area, under which trading commenced on 1st January 2023, is one of the flagship projects of the continent's Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. In this era of global tension and challenging economic conditions, manufacturers, exporters, investors, and industries in Kenya, and indeed in every African country, have transformational growth and development opportunities that they can accelerate by attending the Intra-Africa Trade Fair 2023 and by taking advantage of the African Continental Free Trade Area, creation of continent-wide single markets. The Intra-Africa Trade Fair 2023 Roadshow in Nairobi seeks to inform and empower the Kenyan private sector with information about the opportunities and benefits of participating in the Intra-Africa Trade Fair 2023 and its role in supporting African integration and the success of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. The Intra-Africa Trade Fair 2023 is Africa's premier trade and investment fair and is being held from the 9th to 15th November in Cairo. So you can't say that you don't know the dates or where it's going to happen. I'm pretty sure you've heard that a couple of times. As Africa's largest trade and investment fair, the event is not to be missed for importers and exporters looking to take advantage of a single market of 1.4 billion people created by the Africa Continental Free Trade Area with a combined gross domestic product of over $3.5 trillion US dollars. I hope my panelists have been mic'd. So please put your hands together for my distinguished panelists as they come on stage, as I call out their names. Mr. Jaswinda Bedi, Chairperson, Board of Directors, Kenya Private Sector Alliance, KEPSA, and Kenya Export Promotion and Branding Agency, KEPROBA, Executive Officer. Okay, he's getting mic'd, he'll be on stage. And next, Mr. Ashit Shah, Chairman, Kenya Association of Manufacturing, Automotive Sector, and also the Chairman of Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association. Next, we have Ms. Flora Mutahi, Founder and Chief Executive Officer, Melvin Marsh International Limited, Melvin's Tea. I'm pretty sure we've all heard Melvin's Tea. And then we have Ms. Akinyi Odongo, President and Founder, Fashion Agenda Africa. Last but not least, we have Mr. Kudakwashe Matereke, Regional Chief Officer, Operating Officer, East African Export-Import Bank, AfCTFA. We intend to have an interactive 45-minute panel session, after which we will open up for the questions and answers session. I want us to get as much out of this session, so let us be mindful of time and go straight into our interventions. A round of applause. Thank you, thank you. May I please have a microphone?
Maybe you need to be mic'd.
Viva Africa, viva! I'm getting mic'd. I am back. Viva Africa, viva! Thank you so much. Mr. Jaswinda, as the chair of KEPSA and KEPROBA, you have a full spectrum of the private sector space in Kenya. How are you ensuring that Kenyan companies learn and seize opportunities created by the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement?
Thank you very much for that question, and I think it's very apt for this audience.
The truth of the matter is, yes, there's a huge opportunity out there. We're looking at 1.4 billion people on the continent. The combined market size for the continent is $3.5 trillion. Kenya is 100 billion out of that, so you can do the maths. It's a very small pie, a very small slice of the pie. And yes, to grow our economies and to make sure that we start thinking differently, we need to start thinking market diversification, product diversification, regional integration. There's so much that needs to be done, and especially when you look at the stats, they're totally discouraging because Africans don't trade with Africans. 14.4% is the trade number, Africa trading with Africa. So Africa largely trades with outside Africa. And I don't blame Africa in its entirety because obviously you see the situation, our infrastructure doesn't support intra-Africa trade. And I think it was mentioned earlier on. But largely if you go back into our history, rewind yourself 50 years, 60 years, I think our colonial past, the infrastructure that was built on the continent was more extractive. What can we take out of the continent to Europe or our colonial past? And so that is largely raw materials. So when you see the infrastructure, whether it's the copper in Zambia, you know, the railway line is built to take goods out from the mines. If you look at cotton in Mali or Burkina or Uganda, so our entire infrastructure is extractive base. Gold, South Africa, or diamonds, it's all extractive. It's in to out and not in to in and out to in. So we have a serious problem with infrastructure. I mean, I know in my own business, I was trying to buy some fair trade cotton from Mali, and the delivery time was 5 months. Why? It had to go to Singapore before it comes to Mombasa. And so it just doesn't make sense in terms of logistics. The world is moving. Everybody wants speed to market. And speed to market can only be driven if we have connectivity on the continent. If you look at the air option is also extremely expensive because of the various taxes that are involved in the various countries. And we are looking at, 55 countries. Short of saying that the African Union, it's a huge opportunity for the continent. But if you have to go to Casablanca, I have to go to Europe and then come down. And how does that make sense? Why should I go to Europe when I really didn't want to go to Europe, but I need to go to Casablanca? So I think we have issues around infrastructure, but the opportunity is huge. The opportunity is now. And for Kenya, 60% of our exports are in the region, and we want to grow that. Our exports today are about a $6 billion export. Our imports last year actually went up to $21 billion. Our trade imbalance moved up from $10 billion to $15 billion. We've seen the pressure on the shilling because of that expansion. But if you look at the import book, that $15 billion, the $21 billion import book, a lot was not from Africa. You know, like I said, very little was from Africa. So we, as a continent, and if I look within the continent, the largest trading partners on the continent, really China and India, and I call them Chindia. And Chindia controls 40% of the import book on the continent. So we can't replace that. It is possible, and we will. And I'm sure combined in this room, we can make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that passionate contribution. And you've really reinforced the infrastructure gap that we still have on the continent when it comes to trading with one another. And I would like to go to Mr. Shah. You're in the automotive industry. Are non-trade barriers an impediment to intra-African trade, and what are some of your ideas of the best way to address them to widen the market and create the opportunities?
Thank you. I can call you Viva Ann?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that question. So when we went to the last IATF, we found that each and every country was actually coming up with their own automotive policies and regulations and standards. And the last IATF is when the whole automotive sector actually got together for the first time. And we started building joint synergies on what affects in terms of non-tariff barriers or how do we improve trade within Africa. Africa imports about more than 3 million vehicles a year. And I would say probably 90% of the vehicles are second-hand, and they actually come outside Africa. there's a lot of trade from, well, a lot of imports from outside Africa. We find that biggest barrier is the second-hand vehicles coming in. There was a research which was done which has figures on 70% of the African countries actually import vehicles which are more than 15 to 17-year-old. And those vehicles actually come in from Far East, India, okay? And none of those second-hand vehicles actually come in within Africa. So why can we not have new vehicles made in Africa, and we trade with second-hand vehicles within Africa at a substantial incentives and all that, and what AfCTFA is working on. The other issue was on standards, and I think we're now working on the ASO standards for the automotive sector, and looking at how do we create similar standards within the African continent. And instead of each and every country working on their own standards, we looking at have a standard for Africa and see what we can do together. The other issue was on there is no need of each and every country coming up with their own model and manufacturing their own model. We rather work together and look at how we can have one model and sell to the whole of Africa. And the standard, basically a model which is created for Africa. And instead of each and every country making their own models and not getting volumes. In automotive, I think the biggest competitive edge is when you have volumes, and we have more than 3 million vehicles demand, I'm sure we can be able to get volumes within Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You've talked about the standards and also for us to create our own automotives and then trade with the continent. So how have you been able to harness the power of innovation, technology in that aspect?
Okay, so we've come up with an association which is African Association of Automotive Manufacturers, and South Africa being number one leading in automotive, followed by Morocco. We actually placed Kenya as number 5 or 6. So a lot of discussions and joint programs have come up in the last 2 years, where we've had, in the last 2 years, we've had more than 40 South African companies coming into Kenya and partnering with the parts manufacturers, with some of the assemblers in creating new vehicles. We have a lot of discussions on the e-mobility sector in the last 6 months, especially when our president is quite committed on looking at e-mobility. On development of parts for the Euro 4, Euro 5, and Euro 6 vehicles, there's a lot of discussions going on. How do we have people like VW, Mercedes coming in and developing the whole automotive sector? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll come to you, Ms. Flora. You've been in the manufacturing industry for a very long time. You're a leader in your space, but you're also very passionate about building the next leaders in the manufacturing industry. You've invested a lot in youth and women. So how should the young entrepreneurs position their businesses and brands for regional integration?
All right, thank you. It's Viva Ann, right? So thank you very much. And it is true, there's a lot of opportunities for the women and for the youth. And I believe one of the things is they first of all have to come to the party. So how prepared are they to come to the party? And there's always, yes, let's export into the African continental. It's a great opportunity. But what is the stability of your business? I always believe in going deep before you go wide. So I believe this is their time to really solidify their businesses, make sure they have proper business models. And there are a lot of associations and groups that can actually help women and youth solidify their businesses, have a strong business plan. And once you have that, then you start taking such opportunities, because, I mean, they're brilliant markets. I think the doctor who was here earlier said that there's this whole supply chain, I would call it a push, because if I supply a big brand that actually is going on to the continent, they will build my capacity and they would help me to go there. So for me, it's around having an open mind, looking at opportunities, making sure that you're a solid business, and that you come to the party. Because what I tend to find with a lot of the youth and whatever, there's this whole notion of like, there's no chance for us, we don't have the funding, but there's a lot of hand-holding, there's a lot of opportunities, like I mentioned, either through supply chain, associations, groups, that could actually do that. And you know, we saw AfCTFA is already one of them. So there's a lot available, and I think they do need to take the opportunity.
Okay, thank you so much for reinforcing on the importance of scaling. I'm just still going back to you. From your story, right, building Melvin Marsh International Limited, what are some of the challenges? Because yes, you started and then you've been able to build this recognizable brand. So what are some of the challenges and how did you overcome them, more so when it came to intra-Africa trade?
The challenges, I say for anybody in business, I call it the big A. Because let's begin with, do I have access to the knowledge to what do I want to make? You know, do I have that information? You know, there's the universities, there's research centers, or perhaps you've worked in a business, so you have that. From there, you move to another access of, labor. Do I have the right skills? Can I employ the right skills? Can I afford the right skills? Because what you tend to find as a growing business, you always need the next level. So the ones who are trained by somebody else maybe now have reached a stage where they're not good enough for you. So access to skills. Of course, access to finance. How do you access finance? And especially if you speak of women and youth, how do you access finance without a lot of collateral? Right now, I must say, I've done my business 27 years. I was the champion of bouncing checks. I would make commitments that I would not keep up because I needed to grow. But right now I found the banks and everybody have come to the party. You know, they're able to do debenture financing, stock financing. I think there are a lot of models, and I know AfCTFA today has said they're even going deeper to actually understand the Africa, to finance the AfCTFA. So again, so it's all these accesses that we have. Access to standardization. Do you even know what is available? Do you understand what is available? How do you then crack it? For example, after this whole AfCTFA began, I started getting a lot of calls from Ghana. Of course, for tea, I do my brand Melvin's Tea, and we did get somebody who actually paid me in December for what he wanted. And he said, don't worry about standardization, I'll do it. Do you know the standardization came through end of May. May 31st is when he actually said, now you can ship the goods. So if it is taking us so long just to do standards, and mark you, between Kenya and Ghana, there's the GTI, there's the Guided Trade Initiative. So there are a lot of challenges around access. Then there's the access to the markets. So can you even get to the markets? Do you know how to get to the markets? The logistics around it. I remember that guy calling around 3 different airlines because it wasn't so big, it didn't need to go by ship yet. 3 different airlines, and every time he sealed a deal, by the next 2-3 days, because he was disorganized, documentation, there's a lot of documentation that goes through, he misses that offer. And he's told, no, now let's start again. So all these accesses are actually barriers that we need to overcome. And I really want to thank AfCTFA. I've seen the model of, they've actually looked at a lot of the pain points that we face in business as entrepreneurs, and they've actually sort of modeled it onto this portal. I cannot wait to begin to use it and see what it actually opens up. So if I want to go into Casablanca, all I have to do is the AI will tell me, speak to X and Y distributor, so I'll be very able to test it. And of course, the last one is even payments. You know, they want to pay you in their local currency. Of course, we want dollars right now. So we're very happy to receive dollars, but I do understand the importance because also we buy also on the continent, and sometimes you really just want to pay in your own currency. So I really want to thank them, and I think it's a great innovation that Africa has decided to solve Africa's problems, because you know, like we've heard, the inter-Africa trade is so poor that we need to move it. Logistics, I think, is another one. Whether do you go by air, do you go by road? When you go by road, do the goods get there in time? So it's a whole myriad of challenges that now are starting to be ironed out. And like they say, a journey begins with a first step.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I'll go back to Jess before I go to the next speaker. As you heard from Ms. Mutai, I mean, she's really elaborated the access that we need, right? So how are you helping the private sector in Kenya to really access new markets? Because intra-Africa trade is also about the market linkages.
Well, I'll change my cap now from the Kenya private sector to Kenya Export Promotion and Branding Agency, which is what I chair. And I think your question is specific and direct, that how will I help Kenya and Kenyan market access in the continent? So at KEPROBA, Brand Kenya, we are very clear that for us to actually access this huge opportunity, like I said, $3.5 trillion, 1.4 billion people, we are actually in our strategy for the next 5 years, we are very clear that we want to build warehouses, and I call them Kenya House. And in that Kenya House, all you need to do is simple logic, and then take your exporters there. So we will have this facility, which will partner with our exporters. Primarily, it will be Kenya Association of Manufacturers, purely because there's a value addition component for the rules of origin under the CFTA, like under COMESA. And that as soon as you meet that value addition criteria, you're allowed this duty-free market access. And yes, so we will be able to take you there. Consolidate cargo initially, because it'll be difficult for somebody to fill up a 40-footer to go to DRC with just one line item. You probably need 50 different SKUs. So we might talk to 20 different manufacturers, put their goods in one container, initially do once a week. Then as business starts picking up, maybe do it twice a week, then maybe 3 times a week, and then maybe every day. So make it easy. Take the exporter to the watering hole, as I call it, to the marketplace. In that marketplace, he will be able to then sell into that domestic territory, pay the domestic taxes, and we will take a whole ecosystem with us. We're even talking to Equity Bank and other African Kenyan banks that are interested to partner with us so that they will be part of the ecosystem. We will create an ecosystem for our investors, our exporters, and make it seamless to the marketplace. So I think that is our plan, and we will deliver. And of course, as you know, the Kenya Kwanza government is very clear. The manifesto just talks about one line item, which is the most important line item, according to me, is export-led growth. And once you do that, you actually, at the back of that, it's all jobs, jobs, and jobs. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very ambitious plan that you have on the table. And I hope the private sector leaders are listening, and they'll make sure they've...
It's not actually ambitious. It's actually very easy to deliver, because I don't even need to invest.
Oh.
It becomes ambitious when you are investing money. I'm taking a master lease of a warehouse in a facility in the DRC Congo, for example, and I stick my head to it as the lessor. And then that lessor gives a sublease to 50 manufacturers, 100 manufacturers. So I'm only sticking my head out of the sand, but yes, I'll take them to the watering hole, and that's the way to do it.
Thank you, and thank you. We always need leaders who make it easy for us to move into new markets, to be able to do business, and clearly we have the right chair at KEPSA to help us with that. So I'll come to you, Mr. Kenyi. I mean, you're in the industry of new money, as some call it. So how do you think we should position the creative industry at the Intra-African Trade Fair 2023 to ensure that the creatives maximize on the opportunity? And what are some of the opportunities that you see for the Kenyan fashion industry by engaging at the IATF?
Thank you very much for the question. Firstly, I would like to say that the creative industry is an industry that hasn't been looked into deeply. And I'm glad that AfCTFA has really looked into it, and just hearing from the story of Under a Tree to where we are right now. I was able to attend the last one online, and also was present at the Roadshow the last one as well. What I would like to say is that we need to look at the creative space not just as fashion, but as different aspects of the creative space. We have film, we have culinary arts, we have sports, we have music, we have dance. It's so wide, and we are yet to find an institution or organization that can dig deep and really demystify the different sectors of fashion or art and really be clear. And I want to believe that by the funding with AfCTFA, we are able to now categorize these particular sectors, because each sector is quite huge and has its own participants and its own, I mean, it's a whole value chain. Music is a value chain. Fashion is a value chain. Culinary art is a value chain. And if I take an example of fashion, where I'm at, is where I look at farm to fashion. It's not just the clothes that I make. It's from the farmer, the woman in the village. It's from the youths who are down there. And some of the things that we need to look into, if you go to Cote d'Ivoire or most of the African countries that really look into the cotton value chain, you realize it's the older people who are actually the farmers and in the fields doing fashion. So how are we able to really have this conversation that we are able to have, even the younger generation getting into farming, from farm to fashion, so that I can be able to wear an outfit that I can trace, because also traceability is quite important right now for us to trace where is the product coming from. We can trace this is from Maina in a certain village, and we are able to trace that from the thread, from the cotton and all that. And just sitting here on this panel, I'm glad that I'm also with my mentor on the panel. And I get fabrics from Jazz, his factory in Nakuru. And we can be able to trace from the cotton and then the way the spinning is done to the fabric to the end. So how do we translate that to even the younger people? Because Africa is not just the next big thing, but it is the big thing. If we look at whether it's architecture or any aspect of creativity in the world right now, is all the inspiration is from Africa. But the saddest part is that we as Africans have not really stepped up and positioned ourselves and taken up this space and say, we own it. Let's be the ones to speak about it. Let's be the ones to position this. So I think for me is it's to see how we are able to also work on the whole sector and maybe be very sector specific and see what are we building from the whole value chain of each and every creative sector. If I take an example of the fashion industry, Africa is a space where we do not have our own measurements. We still use either American measurement, European measurements, and it's something we forget. I mean, we don't even think about it. And it's time for the bank to invest if there's money. I mean, we have designers and creatives across Africa who can be put in a room and can actually start working on this. And we can create the first African sizing, because we are very different. My upper part and my lower part is quite different. I'm a size 14, size 16, and we are just blessed that way. So if we can just appreciate, we need to appreciate ourselves and be proud of ourselves. So this is a challenge that I'm throwing to the bank. With the money that you've set aside, we have amazing creatives across Africa that we can bring into a room and start this process. What do we need to do? Who are the organizations that we need to work with so that we can finally come up with a measurement for Africans by Africans? And also the open market. We'd like to have the open market for all of us, for the creatives. And when I speak about this, I'm very passionate about the creative space. Oh my God. We are small businesses. You will find that most designers would be employing about 2 to 3 employees, or even up to 10. Collectively, if you look at Kenya, I was a former, I've served in the Fashion Council. I took part in the formation of the Kenya Fashion Council, and I served for 6 years. One of the challenges that we have, we didn't even have the database, and a number of data has been collected. The fashion industry in Kenya has been the most researched industry in this country. Yet, all those documents are sitting somewhere on every shelf, whether it's World Bank, whether it's all these organizations doing all this research. So it's high time that we start picking also, we don't reinvent the wheel. How do we pick these things from the shelves where they are and implement what has been suggested? Something like IP. If there's a continent that has been abused, it's Africa. And I think also with colonization, and also we haven't really taken up our responsibility as a people to own and value what we have. Africa is the place where I'm seated right now. There's gold under here, and I'm not even aware. But someone else will come and find gold and then map it out and say, bring down this building. So what are we as Africans doing? Are we really appreciating what we have and supporting each other? And before we even go further to the boundaries of each country, even within us, as a small sector, even around 10 designers or 10 musicians, you find that we don't really collaborate and support each other and work towards a goal. I think it's a mindset shift that we need to have as Africans creatives, that we need to work together and see how are we building each other instead of tearing each other apart. I think that's a point that we really need to take into action. And with your support, I think matters of IP are very critical. We are losing a lot of our art, not only in Kenya, but all over Africa. It's time that we need to have more trainings on owning our space and owning what we have. And then the funding, how do we ensure that we have bankable businesses? Because we have little small businesses with 2, 3, 4 employees, which eventually become millions and millions of employees across Africa. How do we come up with either common user facilities for each country where we are able to have maybe this region, East Africa region has a common user facility that different designers can actually come and produce their product. We put them in the containers and make use of the Keproba, warehouses where you're creating. And I'm looking forward to put into account Flois and Chair. I will ensure that those places are there and there's spaces for the small designers to also position their brands. I think that's it.
Oh, wow.
For me.
Thank you so much for your passionate contribution. You've touched on a lot of key issues, and I'm pretty sure the Executive Vice President has noted them too. You talked on collaboration. So how relevant are initiatives such as the Made in Kenya, Made in Africa? Do they help to foster that environment for collaboration?
When you talk about Made in Kenya, and I'm glad that I was part of the team that was prepared the Made in Kenya initiative for the government when I was at the Fashion Council, and with Keproba, Kenya Association of Manufacturers, and we did come up with a document. And this was basically to ensure that everybody wears something that is local. Buy Kenya, Build Kenya initiative, which again was to help people understand that we need to, first of all, celebrate yourself at home. As Flora was saying, dig deep before you go wide. What do we have? Can we appreciate? Because also when you try your hands at home, you can make mistakes. The moment you start going global or going wide, all your order will be back. So at least you have a chance to at least test something from home. So this was an initiative that still continues and it is working. It has worked. All of you in the room, are you wearing anything local? Raise up your hand. Yes. All those wearing local, let's clap for the ones wearing local. If you're not wearing local, you're not building Kenya. And we want to, and Flora is reminding me it's a Friday initiative. No, we need to wear Kenya every day. and sometimes we even had an issue where what does it mean to buy Kenya, build Kenya? It's not just the printed African material. It could it could be an earring you're wearing. It's made in Kenya. You're wearing a made in Kenya. It could be a shoe. It could be a bag. It could be a bracelet. I think we have done very well with the bracelets all over the world. So it's just what every day as you walk out. And that's something that has sunk because we were part of that document. Every time I'm in the supermarket, I'm reminded, Melvin's tea. I'm conscious about what am I building? Am I putting money into a Kenyan pocket? And that's what we need to transfer to the African continent as well. So I can talk the whole day, so let me shut.
No, thank you so much. I mean, from the clapping in the audience, it's clear that they agree with your contributions. Oh, thank you for the affirmation. So please start preparing your questions, and then there'll be a roaming microphone in the audience for us to use. To you, Mr. Kudakwashi. You've heard from the other leaders their thoughts on what needs to be done to expand the intra-African trade and where the key challenges are. You've been in this role since, you've been in the role of the Regional Chief Operating Officer, East Africa for AfCTFA since 2015. You've understood the market. You've worked with the leaders on the in Kenya and across East Africa. Should Kenyan companies look to trade in Africa beyond the East African region? And what does that actually even look like?
Thank you very much. And I think the answer to the question is yes. And we need Kenya to look beyond the East Africa community. Because when you look at Kenya's exports as a percentage of GDP, have not been doing particularly well over the last few years. I think we were 24% in 2011, and I need correction to these numbers, and just I know you are good at the numbers. We are currently 20.7. So we are yet to go back to where we were some years back. And it cannot be done through over-reliance on an East Africa community export arrangement. We have to look beyond the East Africa community. Kenya is already doing quite a lot in the East Africa community. It's a leader in terms of trade. And when we look at the fact that we are probably trading the most in terms of our linkages into the African continent beyond tea, we are a hub for petroleum products, crude oil products, etc. But they are going just into the region. And yet we are struggling to up our export numbers. It tells you that we have to look beyond what we are doing in the East African community. If we go into the rest of the African continent, the benefits to that is that it brings us diversity in terms of what we export. It brings us resilience because we get to produce goods that are better in terms of standards, because going out of East Africa, Flora raised a thing. When she wanted to trade with Ghana, a lot of questions were asked, and she demonstrated that she could. And when you break into the markets outside your own region, you bring that resilience because your goods are likely to be accepted beyond your traditional market. So it is important because you start creating opportunities for value-added goods. Because if you want to trade in tea, I live in Uganda, coffee. We have tea, we have coffee. What can you trade as Kenya if you are in the tea and coffee sector? So you need to move out to the bigger markets, Nigeria, increase your share in Egypt, etc., because that's how you can bring value-added goods. We also need to increase our exports beyond the East Africa community because you need to generate enough income to offset the import bill. It keeps rising. And currently, when all our imports are denominated largely in US dollars, the pinch is felt. It's bigger, and we need to increase the volume of our exports. And you cannot say, if you're a Kenyan company, you reach point of saturation for East African community, and the market has been widened by the coming in of the Intra-Africa trade fair. And we actually would like to engage with Kenyan exporters who want to sell beyond East African community, because in every country you go to, you will find an AfCTFA trade finance intermediary. And by that we just mean it's a complicated way of saying commercial banks that we have a relationship with. So you then say, I want to trade with Ghana, but I'm not quite sensing the commercial banking terrain. AfCTFA, can you add an instrument to make it more favorable for me to receive payments from these parties? We've been talking of the rollout of the Pan-African payment system. Those are some of the ways in which we will come in to assist with making you become more comfortable to export. Now, international standards. If you are a serious exporter and you're exporting only in your neighboring countries, the truth will catch up with you, because whatever certification you got from KEBS may not be sufficient. How do you develop that? You start to need to venture into unknown territory so that you can grow bigger. So you go, probably I'll take the phrase that I got, you went deep, you now understand your markets, but to go wider, you need to build that infrastructure around you to make your goods accepted. And you could actually spend quite a lot of time thinking you're doing well until you move out of the comfort zone. Human capital and skills cannot be grown when you are just looking into one market. To develop the skills, to develop the expertise, go wider, and there is space for Kenyan enterprises to do that. And that's how also we get our MSMEs to be involved in what we do, because it creates a wider base for everyone to participate. So there is all the right reasons for Kenyan enterprises to look beyond the East African community. And the AfCTFA, the AfCTFA provides such an opportunity for them to grow the African market wider and become more relevant. Probably those are the points that I could give for giving reason why Kenyan enterprises need to look beyond the East African community.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kudakwashe. So you've talked on the benefits of Kenya expanding beyond the East Africa region.
Yeah.
So coming back to AfCTFA, right? Excluding the trade finance, which of AfCTFA's interventions, initiatives and programs aid the Kenyan private sector to grasp the benefits of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area?
Some of them have been mentioned. I mean, my colleague spoke quite at length about what we are doing in the space to improve intra-Africa trade. But I'm thinking we need to industrialize, and to industrialize we need to give an opportunity for manufacturers to produce or to value add the raw materials of goods that are made in Africa. We are working very closely with the Ministry of Industry and Trade to expand our integrated industrial parks so that investors can come in, operate in the industrial parks, and give them the capacity to expand. We have done this with some partners like Arise Integrated Industrial Parks in Gabon, in Cote d'Ivoire, in Benin, where you can see us moving wood into furniture for the export markets within the country. Some of these countries like Gabon were notorious for exporting raw timber, but now it's not the case anymore. People are manufacturing within the industrial parks, bringing in value-added products into outside, which are ready for the export markets. We are looking at doing similar things in Kenya, and we have made our propositions. It will not cost the government in terms of borrowing to develop the industrial parks, because we will do it, and we will find people that can come into the industrial parks in order to work from there, employ locals, and produce value-added goods. So it's already happening. So that's industrialization, and that's beyond just trade finance, because we have got a solution for industrialization and exports development. The second point that I would like to raise is exactly what everyone on the panel spoke about: quality. We have a concept of establishing Africa quality assurance centers for most of our goods: food, agricultural, cotton, etc. We are in discussions currently, and I think it was alluded to, what we call the ACAC programs, Africa Quality Assurance Centers, where you set up a center working closely with the authorities in the country. Goods that come out of the region, say East Africa, when they get stamped that they've been certified for export markets from that center, they should then be acceptable to go to any country or any market there is, because they have this quality assurance certificate, which demonstrates that the quality coming out of that conforms with market standards to the receiving destination. So imagine we had such a center for East Africa for our tea, avocados, which I hear are notorious for being rejected. Mm-hmm. When they are on sea, you hear that a consignment has been rejected because we exported this without the assurance that the market that is receiving the goods would take them. So that's the gap that we are trying to close. Set them up here, close to the ports, so that they can be certified and then be received. So it's an ongoing initiative. One center has already been built in Nigeria. We'll start operating. We will put up a center in East Africa, and we are having all those centers put across the African continent so that our goods can be received. And if they can be received in Europe or in America or in Asia, we know that our goods will also be, because it's African, it should be giving us the opportunity for the trades to happen on the African continent. And I think there's a commodity. I think it's, I can't remember what it is, but out of Ghana, the goods go to Germany to be tested for them to be sold to Nigeria. That's true. I think it's yam, cassava products, and it just doesn't make sense. The receiving country is next door, but you can't sell directly because once you do so, the KEFIS equivalent, that is the agricultural and food agency in that country, will say no. So we need to set these ones up on the African continent to avoid such challenges, and also to prepare us to trade under the AfCTFA, because we have not seen much. There will be a lot as people try to get into markets. The stories that Flora has been highlighting could actually make other people give up any idea of wanting to export into a neighboring country. We don't see it now because our routes for exports were predetermined for us, but as we try to venture into other markets that are within neighboring countries, we will see more of these challenges, and we had anticipated that, and we are trying as much as possible to set up these centers. Now, beyond trade finance, as to your question, one other thing that we are doing is under the Africa Gateway platforms. There was a lot of talk about payments systems. There was talk of Mansa, where we do KYC, make Kudakwashe more known or accessible, so that if anybody wanted to sell goods to me from South Sudan, they go onto the platform and try to understand who Kuda is, what does he do, in what sector, is he registered in Kenya for that matter as a company, is he incorporated? Then you start to building confidence that the company firstly exists, they've got banking relationships, and I can now consider them to onboard them as a potential client. We don't have KYC centralized repository system in Africa. So we launched that, and we encourage members of KEPSA, of Kenya Association of Manufacturers, Bankers Association, to sign up to Mansa in anticipation of the need to make contacts with other African buyers and sellers. We spoke about what we do under the guarantee scheme. So you are a contractor in Kenya seeking to win a contract in a neighboring country where you may not be trusted that much. We have a suite of guarantee products which we can provide to an African contractor so that they can win contracts on the African continent. So those are some of the products beyond just trade finance that we provide. And then lastly, the trade information portal under our Africa Gateway enhances the chances of you coming to work with us and say, I want to export such product to country X. Is there a potential? We work together, give you the raw data information that you need to assess the impact of, or not the impact, but the potential of you exporting certain products into some African markets. So we have that capacity and capability, and that's what we do to satisfy the need for information to trade under the AfCTFA.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kudakwashe, for all the information. So now I'm going to open it up for for our audience, questions. So let me just stand up. Yes, I'm going to open it up to our audience for questions. Please just say your name and your title and go straight to your question. No reading statements, please. So we have one. So we'll take a round of, we'll take a round of 5 questions and then we'll respond to them and then come back for the other next round of 5. So we have one here, we have one, the lady raising her hand, and then we have the man at the back, 3. Wow, okay. We're going to stay here until end of the day. And then we have the lady at the back, 4. And then, yeah, you 5, please. There's a roaming mic, right? Thank you.
Good afternoon.
6. I'm sorry.
Can I go ahead?
Please.
Good afternoon. I am Linda Obilo. I work with Melvin Marsh for their export sales.
No.
Can you hear?
Can you hear? No.
I am Linda Obilo. I work with Melvin Marsh in their export sales. My biggest concern would be on logistics, because going ahead and getting the market would be good, but getting our products there in time and efficiently and in good condition. I would just like to know what kind of partnerships are taking place right now with the main logistics companies that are already global, DHL, FedEx, and maybe Aramex, because you find that the cost of goods would be, let me say, a fraction of maybe a quarter, but logistics ends up to be about 10 or 20 times more than that. How can we make it more efficient?
Thank you so much, Linda, for your question. I think that would be yours, Mr. Kudakoshi. Just letting you know in advance. Second one. She's there.
Hello. Hello. Can you hear me? My name is Apondi Muga, and I work with Rialto Fashions in Nairobi. And first of all, I'd like to thank you for the very insightful answers to the questions that were asked. And my question would be to Mr. Bedi about, you know, I'm here as a spokesperson for the youth, being one myself. How do you think young people can brand and present their products to ensure visibility and a definite erase of Western influence in the product presentation in Kenya?
Thank you so much, Apondi. The third one was a guy.
Thank you. Thank you so much. My name is Maina. Mine is a quick question to AfCTFA Bank about the PAPS payment system. So I just wish to understand how different it is from the normal, the normal systems that we have, because if I have my Visa card today, I could maybe travel to Egypt or wherever and still withdraw the cash from the ATM in the local currency. So I wish to understand when I'm paying someone or when I'm receiving payment from through the PAPS system, how different is it from the normal systems, and who decides the rates and the exchange rates and the rate at which that amount will be transferred? Thank you.
Thank you, Maina. We have a lady this side.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Conchita Lilian. Oh, can you hear me?
Now, yes.
Okay, so my question is to Ms. Sakinyi. Unfortunately, I'm not hearing made in Kenya by Kenyans. This is because if you look at it quite well, made in Kenya by Kenya is much more costly than imported items. So what are the regulations or plans to make sure that I can be able to wear this from Monday to Friday, not Friday only?
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Pamela Hago. I'm the Commissioner of Customs, responsible for movement of your goods across Africa. I'm here on behalf of Commissioner General, Mr. Humphrey Mulongo, And I just want to share with you one or two tips on movement of your cargo within Africa and what we have done so far to facilitate you in terms of trade. Number one, regarding the role of customs, we do not only collect taxes, we also play a role in trade facilitation. We facilitate your exports across Africa, and right now we are giving priority to exports because we really need that dollar. So when you come and you say you are exporting, I'll run, and I'll make sure your goods go. So that is the level where we have reached, and we are there. For COMESA, we are already implementing the regional bond, where you are able to move your goods with only one single bond across Africa. We are working with other partners to ensure this is implemented to the letter. It's already working in COMESA, and Egypt is a member of COMESA. So be sure you move your goods to Egypt with one single bond. That is already there working. We call it RCTG, Regional Customs Transit Bond. It's there. Then we are riding also on one-stop border post, the OSBPs, and we have quite a number in the country, from Malaba, Busia, Isebania, to all that. We have them. And in this one-stop border post, as much as we are facilitating you to use one transit bond, we are also facilitating you to just have one stop at the border. When you reach the border, you'll be seen by both Uganda and Kenya customs seated together. When you cross the other side, you don't have to be stopped again. You just move. So that concept is there, and if we adapt it to implement it in Africa, it will go a long way in facilitating movement of goods across Africa. Finally, for you to export to this African country and also COMESA, we are facilitating you with certificate of origin. It is issued at customs. Once you manufacture your goods, they must qualify, and I'll give you the certificate to make you enjoy duty-free facilities as your goods move to the other countries. Under AFTA is there, and also under COMESA it is there. So for me, as customs, we are ready to work with you, we are ready to facilitate you, we are ready to educate you anytime on these issues so that we can move Kenyan goods. We need the dollar. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pamela, for that valuable contribution. So that was a contribution or a question?
Yeah, I'll try and ask a question. My name is Ben Roberts, Liquid Intelligent Technologies, also chair of ICT Sector Board in Kenya. So I get upset when I hear people talking of lack of infrastructure, because in the digital world, we've basically done the infrastructure. The ZIM border that Gain Moore was talking about, we did 15 years ago. 5 years ago, we were ICT cabling from Cape to Cairo. Now we've got Mombasa to Kinshasa. So we've done the infrastructure. Yet it's obviously making a difference to traditional trade, and these platforms from AfCTFA are trying to boost traditional trade. But in this creative space, in the digital space, we can do it right now, right? Everything is done, digital music, digital video, everything is digital. So it seems that we're actually talking more about regulations, new regulations to block trade of digital assets than we are to just do it. So I think we could move faster. So maybe it's for AfCTFA and for Kenya. How do we move faster in creative, driving creative space, driving the digital trade of creative assets, digital assets?
Thank you so much. So I'll go back to my panelists. So we'll start with Linda's question on logistics.
Thank you. What I wanted to understand from Linda, are you referring to the logistics with respect to the exhibition that is going to happen in Cairo? Okay. That's a difficult one, but I think I would like my colleague to come in because he's more on the facilitation side. Again, more can take the question relating to what we are doing in the logistics space to make the movement of goods more friendly. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that was a very good question. We are fully aware that logistics costs are one of the major challenges in Africa. I think Yas talked about that as well, and we've mapped the entire continent, and we've actually seen it that it's a major challenge for the manufacturers, for the consumers, especially even for the small SMEs who are actually trying to make it in trade. We even saw it in creatives. We were in Ghana, and they were trying to get even some textiles products from South Africa to Ghana. They didn't arrive it took more than a month. And then the cost, they were just bringing in a few quantities. The cost that they ended up paying was it was actually killing the business. Then they even stopped importing from Africa. They said it's better to bring it from Asia. So we've seen that, and at the bank, what we're actually trying to do is we are working on, that is actually one of the reasons why the bank introduced a trade facilitation department where we actually engage with the government to address some of these bottlenecks. Some of the bottlenecks are probably caused by inefficient customs, inefficient borders. East Africa has done very well in terms of improving these logistics, but in other regions, there's still a lot that needs to be done. We also are actually supporting the construction of one-stop borders. We are using digital technology to break down the barriers, actually, to ensure that we reduce the costs. And we are also implementing what we call the border market infrastructure. It's an initiative that is looking at all the trade facilitation challenges across the corridors. So we map all the challenges and we put the requisite infrastructure, whether you need a one-stop border post, whether you just need to automate and put technology. There's one case that we actually studied. I will not mention the guilty countries, but they're in Southern Africa. To move 1,200 shipments from that country to another country in the same region, you actually needed close to 800,000 pages of documentation. And then if you are now crossing another border, you multiply that by 3. So these are the inefficiencies that we have, and the cost we are putting on consumers, on small players. So we also do a lot of advocacy, engaging with the government, engaging with customs. They've now become our #1 friend, and they've been actually facilitating. They've actually realized that their job is not actually only to collect the dollar, but to facilitate the collection and the people to be able to earn that dollar. So we've got a range of trade facilitation initiatives that we are implementing to reduce the trade and logistics cost. Some of the things requires actually putting in place the roads, the infrastructure, but we've also, as part of the, I didn't have time to talk about it, the Africa Trade Gateway, we're actually putting in place an initiative that we call a Pan-African e-logistics platform that is going to coordinate all the logistics. You're talking about the DHL, Aramex, all these. We are working with all these people. Kobo 360 in Egypt. You've got, I don't know, what do you call them? There's Lorry. So there are many of these logistics players that we are working with to reduce the logistics cost. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Genwa. I could see Pamela smiling when you talked about the partnership with the customs. Jess?
Thank you very much. I think the question was very apt. We're talking about the African youth, and we're talking about the maiden age on the continent being 19. So we are the youngest population in the world if you look at our average maiden age. So to me, that's a great opportunity for us. As a people of the continent of Africa, we can either make this youth a very productive society, and if we do nothing, we can make a very destructive society. I think the decision lies in this room. Obviously, we want to make this youth a productive society, and we need to nurture them to make them productive. So if you look at the numbers, 1 in 4 people in this planet by 2050 will be African. So our population is growing, we have a young population, and 33% of the working age population in the world is going to be African. So if you see a continent of 1.4 billion people, and 2050 is not so far away, we're looking at about 27 years from now, we are 2.5 billion people. So to me, it's just a serious opportunity. A young population, not aging, all they need to be nurtured. We brand them to a productive society, which it can happen. And yes, we've been talking about trade in goods all morning, and the presentations that we've had so far. And yes, Ben brought in a dimension of trade in services. And do we have the same logistical nightmare in trade in services? Maybe not. But trade in goods, yes. So that optimum blend between trade in services, which you saw with M-Pesa disrupting the world, and that was an invention out of Kenya. So we could also be very disruptive. So the point I'm making is, yes, we need to create the jobs for the youth. We need to make sure the youth are employed, and we need to nurture them to become productive. Otherwise, it's not so difficult for this youth, if they get very destructive, for them to swim across the 8 miles in North Africa from Gibraltar to Europe and to become a single biggest problem. We've seen the migration that happens from Tanzania to Kenya with the wildebeest. It will not be any different if we don't nurture this continent to a productive society. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jas. Round of applause, yes. Could we on PAPS?
On PAPS, I think my brother oversimplified the way things actually go. That you take your card and then you withdraw money and that's it. Because you notice that if it happens in a local situation where you have an account and you have a card and you go to the ATM, you withdraw money. Try to do a cross-border transfer and in a formal process. That's when you realize that there's a big challenge. In fact, if what you are saying was that easy, we wouldn't be having banks today who are failing to make a transfer for imports through the normal channel, where you go as an exporter with import documents and you say, I've got an invoice, I need to pay somebody in Egypt, and you are buying tiles or whatever to build your house, and then you are told by the bank there's no foreign exchange, number one, or alternatively that you don't have RIMA exchanges with the party that you are trying to deal with. We are currently struggling, and I think that was something that was mentioned a few months ago, where Egyptian banks were also struggling to remit dollars for tea exported out of Kenya. What are we saying about PAPS? What we are saying about PAPS is that we set up an institution where we want all central banks and as many commercial banks as possible to sign up to PAPS. What will happen is that I will keep, if I'm an importer in Kenya, I am dealing with an exporter in another African country. We enter into an arrangement, we agree, you will pay for your goods at a price of X. That's equivalent to Kenya shillings 1,000 bob. And you in Egypt, you will receive in Egyptian pounds. You simply walk into your bank, send an instruction for your account to be debited by X amount from your account, and the party buying your goods that is supplying goods to you in Egypt is expecting to receive Egyptian pounds. The issue here is the settlement. The settlement will be done by the central banks ultimately, considering what is the net position after all the trades have been done. That's what we are doing under PAPS. That's the long and short of it. As countries trade, we find that probably Kenya has bought goods worth 1,000, and the other party has also traded goods worth 1,200. You are settling the difference between the two at the settlement position. That's what we are doing under PAPS, and we think that the burden of the settlement and the finding of foreign exchange should not be left to the trader. Rather, it is that of central banks to settle. Currently, central banks are doing it, but how are they doing it? It actually means that to settle the position of goods traded between Uganda and Kenya, the two central banks have to have each other's currencies in their accounts for them to do the payments. That system can work, but we don't think that it can be used as an Africa-wide way of making settlements for cross-border trade. So that's what we are trying to solve under the Pan-African Payments Settlement System. So I think I thought I should clarify that point so that it's a bit clearer. And you can also check, and if there is anything, I'm willing to address any questions relating to PAPS. If there is something that we can do to make the PAPS information more accessible, we can link you up to the PAPS team so that these questions on the actual mechanics can be addressed. I don't know if there's anything else on PAPS.
No. Thank you so much, Kujwa. Akinyi, on the regulation and also the digital infrastructure.
I think the question that was directed to me was the cost. The cost of locally made products, that they are quite expensive and not affordable. If you convince someone that Akinyi's hair is all black and they haven't seen me before, they would believe it until they see me and then realize, oh, it's actually gray and black. I'm just trying to use that as an example of there's something called market segmentation or target market. If I wanted a shirt worth 500 shillings, a new shirt, I'll be able to find it today in Nairobi. If I want an outfit worth 50,000 or 30,000, I'll be able to find it in Nairobi. So it's all about what is your target market? So this is a question that has been, every time when we were doing the Buy Kenya, Build Kenya strategy, most of the people are like, we cannot afford to buy things that are done locally. They're quite expensive. But then the question would be to you who is looking for that product that is made locally, where are you looking at? Are you going to a place where it's within your budget or within your pocket? If I paint a picture of a designer, what the process that it takes to create an outfit, especially when it has details. And if you look at the pricing, you'll find that a shirt that is just simple, cut flat, front, back, you may buy it at 500, 600. You'll find a shirt that has got pin tags, button stand, buttonholes, pockets. It cannot be 500 shillings because there's work that has gone into it. A designer will do pattern drafting, which is architecture or fashion, if I may put it in a simple version. They'll have the pattern drafting, they have the process, they have a team, they have two tailors, one tailor. I mean, it takes so much time to produce one shirt, and then we are working one shirt versus 1,000 pieces. So if you're producing one shirt, you can't sell it the same price as someone who's producing thousands of shirts, mass production. So you just have to identify your market, know what fits your pocket, and go for it because it is available. You can find the cheapest outfit locally. You can find the most expensive outfit locally. So let's not make an excuse. Buy Kenya, build Kenya. Buy Africa, build Africa.
Thank you so much, Akinyi. I know there's so many hands in the room for more questions, but we're running out of time. We are, yeah, so, okay. I'll be biased because you brought me water. But the panelists will still be around after the closing remarks, so you can reach out to them, ask questions, get their business cards. This event is also a networking event, so we need to network with one another and not just the panelists. There's a lot of wisdom in the room, in the audience too, so please take advantage of that.
My name is Peter. I'm a data scientist at Oxford Aptitude Limited. There's something that we haven't discussed about, and that's energy. Now, energy is a very serious thing. I want to give an example. Energy in China today is 0.7 cents. Assuming the inflation of China, is around 0.99% or 1%. So it means if you convert in Kenyan terms, it's 5 Kenyan shillings per kilowatt hour. Energy in Kenya is 27 shillings per kilowatt hour. So let's take the example of Flora, the Melvin tea. If she's producing Kenya tea here today, it means she's paying 5 times more than the Chinese producer. Her tea will live here in Kenya, go to Singapore, go to Europe, before it goes to Ghana. Now, a Chinese tea will just take 2 weeks to here. Now, if I want her to compete China, and remember, the open market we're opening is not only for Africans, also for Chinese. So if I want her to compete favorably with China, how many years will it take? That's one. The second question is about automotive. Same thing with energy. For us to build our own, we need to mine, we need to melt our metals, we need to assemble them. Now, in Kenya, let's take an example of Mobius. Mobius imports 70% of its products. It uses only 30% from Kenya. So is it a Kenyan product or is it an abroad product? The second thing is driving policy. In East Africa, most of us are from colonial thieves. We drive on the right side of the road. And on the left side of the road, but we are right-driven. Now, most of African countries divide rights on the left side and their right hand. We need to have that connected. I don't know what you're doing to make sure that, but worse is the speed. Now, if I'm driving in East Africa, the average speed is 60 kilometers per hour. If you add Cameroon in this equation, the average speed goes down to 40 kilometers per hour, 30 kilometers per hour. Internationally, we are moving at 90 kilometers per hour. Now, if you put, even if I produce today, my good is moving at 30 kilometers per hour, how long will it take to reach Ghana? So, and the last thing that we haven't talked about is sports. The last one. Sports. Now, you have to understand that sports is one of the biggest revenue earner for Africa. And the average age of African is 19 years. So even when you compare in Europe, the average age is 39 years. So most sports people who are going to play in Europe are going to come in Africa. But we have no African Zimbabwe talking about it. We are like, we don't have enough stadiums. We don't have tracks. We don't have policy of transfer players. Like I want a player to come from Ghana and play in Kenya. We don't have that infrastructure. Thank you very much. I would want to talk more, but again.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate.
The question.
No, there's what?
Because what you are doing, my brother, you are just giving.
First of all, my question is, what are we doing to ensure that we reduce the cost of energy to be at international level where Flora Mutai can produce coffee tea without being worried that the foreign tea will come and take her market?
Okay. I hope we are not trying to tell us that let's fix the cost of power before we trade between each other. Because, no, we cannot fix the challenges before we start to trade. We need to build all that as we trade. Because today I'm aware that every country has an energy policy that seeks to reduce the cost of power, the cost of a unit of power in every country. When we speak in Uganda, where I stay, the president of Uganda is very clear that he needs to build more hydro projects at a lower cost so that you reduce the cost of power over time. In Tanzania, recently we supported the construction of a major hydro project producing close to 2,000 megawatts. And that will feed into the East Africa and the SADC power pool with the hope of reducing the cost of power as we move along. So we need to build the infrastructure for power generation. And eventually, the cost of power will come down. But that should not be used as an excuse. I hope not. So I'm in agreement with you there.
Can I just add something on my colleague panelist has said? Let me just correct the statement on power. Kenya's power is not 27 shillings a unit. It's actually 22. And if you divide that by 150 shillings or 148 shillings, which is today's exchange rate, it's actually back to where it was at 14 US cents a kilowatt hour. So there is no increase in the cost in US dollar terms, because you were comparing it in US dollar terms. The same amount of the power price has gone up. Devaluation of currency actually levels it out. But more importantly, I don't think that is the discussion that we should be having. The discussion we should be having is Kenya and Africa leapfrogged in the digital space with M-Pesa and everything else, and we were the ones who actually fed the world with a new technology of doing business on the digital platform. And I think Kenya and Africa will one more time leapfrog the rest of the world with clean, green energy. Next week on Monday, we have the Africa Climate Summit. We, as Kenya, have 92% of our energy mix is renewable. No country in the world. Our president is clear. By 2030, he wants 100%. So imagine a shirt that says that this shirt is made using green energy, and there's a global revolt against fossil fuels. You'll be the only one selling. Look at it positively. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jos.
One last point that he's trying to raise is that the differences that we may have in the African continent, as if it was such a big problem. I don't think so. If you look at America, it's very well integrated economically, but they've got different legal systems. I think we should avoid looking at what we are in the negative sense, because that's the mess. If you went to university students who are completing their degree in international business, they will come out quite negatively, thinking this dream of having a continental free trade area is far removed from reality because of the way you positioned how different systems may be. Eventually, these systems will integrate because, for instance, transfer policies that you are referring on football players. In COSAFA, which is in Southern Africa, it's very easy for a player to move from Zambia to play in South Africa because they've got a regional body. But one regional body, the challenge we are having currently is that one regional body is not talking to another regional body. So when you talk of moving from one region to the other, that's where the challenge is. That's what AfCTFA is trying to manage and to make it less of a problem. So I thought I would mention that because we need to look at things more positively, because we are not far away from realizing what we are wishing for.
So we'll have you, and then...
Yeah, allow me just to add two more things. It's also business is also a game of numbers. So remember I was talking about access. So when I have an access to a bigger market, despite the power being high, actually the cost of doing business in Kenya, we had done, is almost 12% higher than global. But once I have a game of numbers, I'm able to divide, to spread that. So I'm able to amortize it, and I'm going to be able to do better. The second thing, and there was a lady, the Rialto lady brought that up, is about branding. There's no shortcut to brand building. If there's anything that we need to do more as Africans is to build strong brands. For me, that is my vision, to have strong African brands that go global. Because trading is easy. I can wake up today, I trade tomorrow, I've got good money, yes, but have I built a brand that can, can outlive generations? So that is something, and there's a whole IP space, a whole IP around that, but there's no shortcut to brand building, because then all of a sudden, like he said, you could charge whatever you want. You can charge what you're worth because you have a brand. And I think, let me add another one, is competitive advantage. Let's also take competitive advantage of our regions. Let cocoa come this way. Let tea go that way. Let cotton move where it's moving, like he said about the cars. So let's also use our competitive advantage to actually make this dream a reality.
Thank you. So the other thing I want to say about, and add on what Jas Buddy said, is 92% plus is green energy. If you compare Kenya and South Africa, the price of electricity in Kenya and South Africa is more or less at par. But they manufacture 560,000 vehicles a year and export 70 to 80% of their vehicles to the rest of the world. You might be importing a second-hand vehicle, but it's actually made in South Africa, probably go to Europe and come back to Kenya as a second-hand vehicle. So it's not only about power price, but it's volumes and how do we become globally competitive in terms of other incentives and efficiencies we have in Kenya. The other question you asked on Mobius, that 7% is imported parts which are made locally and the rest are all imported. I want to give you an example of the motorcycle assembly regulations, which Kenya is the only country where we have the localization assembly regulations in motorcycles. We only started off with the first phase of 6 parts which were supposed to be made locally. We are today at 14 parts which are supposed to be made locally. The 14 parts have actually created direct jobs of 3,000 people which were never there before 5 years ago. But we created 3,000 jobs. We have taken baby steps. The 14 parts are less than 5% of the total value of the CKD value for the motorcycle. But we have started somewhere. But we cannot say that we can't do it because we are too expensive or we only have 14 parts which are made locally. You might be driving a motorcycle which is 93% from China or India, right? But at least the 14 parts are made locally and we've created 3,000 jobs. And if we take those baby steps, we might take 10 steps in 3 years and we might create 50,000 jobs to make that. And we started somewhere. But we can't neglect the fact that we need to take baby steps and start moving forward slowly. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a rich panel. And if we had the whole day, I think we'll continue having the conversations and discussions and just learning. I think it's a master class on intra-Africa trade. So please give a round of applause to my distinguished panelists for the exemplary work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Another round of applause. Viva Africa, viva. Viva Africa, viva. We are almost there. I'm very impressed that we still have a full room, so it means that we're doing something right. So our next session, we're going to have the Intra-Africa Trade Fair success story video.
My name is Mohamed Diaby. I'm from Cote d'Ivoire. My company name is Zato Infex. So we specialize in the export of coconuts, but also in the processing of coconut into derivative products such as desiccated coconut, which goes normally for ingredients in different industries like chocolate manufacturers, biscuit manufacturers. So I think we all come to IATF because it's a platform where different countries mixed, and you have all the different African countries. And right now what we're trying to do is how to expand our product within Africa. Africa itself represents now a huge market. Now how to break those barriers and be able to introduce those products within the different type of market that we all have, and see how we can share the different cultures, really. So IATF is a great platform for that because you've got different people from different backgrounds, different languages, different ethnicity, they eat different food. So all of that mix is a really a chance for us to come and expose our product, and the main hope for us is really to get people to understand what we do, share that experience with them, that culture with them, and see how we can introduce our product into their different markets within Africa.
My name is Marina Draglio. I am from Egypt. I have a friend. His name is Marina Ahmed. I am a teacher crochet in Egypt. I have many women work with me in Egypt. I come here I wanted to big my work and my job, and I like this South Africa people. It's very beautiful country. I hope I be very nice and very good here, and I want to make my business.
Hello everyone, my name is Alfred. We found Pixel Ray Studios out of Barbados, Ghana. We just finished an amazing panel about African global screen. And we believe that Africa has the potential to create the most ingenuous, brilliant, and well-scripted content in the world. The Mechanics Weekend is a dream come true for many creators and business people around the world. And more importantly, the greater outcome for not just creators, not just for businessmen, but for Africans everywhere in the world to connect and to celebrate their unity. And that is why platform like this is so commendable, because for the first time, African governments and policies looking at this as wealth and job creation and not entertainment.
My name is Lamia Omar from Egypt. I made jewelry made by Cooper. All of my products handmade, gold plated and silver plated. All my design is for ancient Egyptian, house of Egypt, Islamic, pharaonic. All my design is Egyptian. I hope to show my culture and my art all over the world.
In Nigeria, I saw the challenges the farmers were having. Agriculture was lagging behind as far as the incorporation of technology. And that's when I really saw drones could actually not only make an impact, but it could revolutionize farming. In 2018, I was invited to the Intra-African Trade Fair, and that changed everything for me. This is where I met two Asian men who came to my booth and shared the sentiments that I had around the application of drones on farm fields. That led to the opportunity for me to set up my engineering office right here in Singapore. Today, we're growing and expanding beyond Africa into Southeast Asia. IATF is filled with visionaries that are bringing African solutions to global problems. I would encourage every entrepreneur to give their business a chance and take a leap into Intra-African trade.
IATF2023, connecting African markets.
I hope you just heard we're bringing African solutions to the global problems. So it's not just about African problems. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we are coming to the end of our morning session today. First and foremost, round of applause to all of you. You've been very active. Thank you so much. And then I also hope to see many of you, 3/4, or if not all of you, at the Intra-African Trade Fair that will be taking place this year in Cairo, Egypt, from the 9th to the 15th of November. So please, go online, start registering either in person or virtual. You'll still be counted, so you'll still be a participant. I'm standing between you now and the next session. We're going to have lunch for everyone after the closing remarks, so please stay in until then. And then we have a Canex and automotive meeting that will take place this afternoon in this room after lunch. And we have Ms. Sharon, who will lead us into lunch with a performance, so you don't want to go away. But before then, please help me welcome on stage His Excellency Wael Atia, Ambassador of the Arab Republic of Egypt, to Kenya for the closing remarks.
Chana Mwema. I hope I said that correctly. I'm still new in Nairobi, so I'm picking up a bit by bit. Well, it was very interesting to see all these intriguing and inspiring interventions that we've had today, as well as the questions and answers to it. And I think it gives me a big relief to see that there's this enthusiasm that exists in Kenya, as well as it does in Egypt, for the promotion and the expansion of the free trade area and the implementation, expediting the implementation of that. I think this is one of the things that we are all hoping for. It is the theme of the African Union year for 2023 to expedite the implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. And it is something that we, I think, are hoping to see hoping to see all of you in Cairo very soon. I would also like to commend whoever made this beautiful logo for today. And I think if you look at it, because I've been sitting very close to it, so I've been, all the time people were talking and I've been trying to interpret it. And I can see, it's the map of Africa with no borders between countries, but then the borders only exist around Africa, outside of Africa. So it's actually very telling that, what we need to do is to eliminate the borders, and in this context, the trade barriers between African countries. And then it will be Africa against the outside world. And then there's another thing, which I think is very also creative from whoever did this, is that they did not even miss to indicate that Egypt is actually hosting the third session of this, because Côte d'Ivoire, for logistical reasons, could not host it this year. So in order to keep the periodicity of the fair, so Egypt is hosting it, being the headquarters of AfCTFA. So it's actually, you can see also the arrow indicating why it was moved from Côte d'Ivoire to Egypt. So I really applaud whoever designed this, and this is, I think, one of the things that people early in the morning were talking about creative economy. This is very creative. Let me assure you, I think many of you have been talking to people before the session and in between, in the breaks, and people were asking me, so what about visas, and are we going to be able to get those easily to Egypt? Let me assure you one thing. Egypt last year hosted COP27 on the climate change, and we had 6,000 people from Kenya who obtained their visas in 3 weeks. So I hope there will be 6,000 coming from Kenya to the fair this year. So I think it's, but we are very much capable in the consulate here in Nairobi to issue as many visas as necessary to make sure that there is a successful participation from Kenya this year. However, let me tell you one thing also. Those who are really intending and determined to attend, they can just apply starting now, right after this session. Because simply, the visa is valid for 3 months. So if you apply now, it will still be valid at the time of the fair. So I think, don't wait up and cram up, 1 week or a few days before you travel to obtain your visas. That would, give us really sleepless nights at the embassy and consulate. I would also like to say why it is important that we are having this roadshow in Kenya. And I think this is, I'm borrowing this from the AfCTFA officials I've met and I've spoken to, and I think it is, I'm adding to it as well. Kenya is really viewed by many from outside East African region as a gate for the region. And I can see, as many speakers have said, Kenya is also leader in many areas when it comes to technology, IT, when it comes to banking, and all the services. I think Kenya is a leading country in many areas when it comes to services as well. So, and that is lacking in many other countries. So, and to be able to have an economy based on services and developed ones, as it is in Kenya, it's much easier to be able to work towards more industrialization, because then the infrastructure necessary for these industries to grow is already there. You have the banking system, you have communication system, you have the transportation system, and so on. So I think this is a real benefit and an edge for Kenya that is it was very opportune that we have the Roadshow here. As well, Egypt and Kenya are two leaders in the promotion in Africa for the continental free trade area. And we are really trying to push everyone to expedite the implementation of the agreement very soon. The AfCTFA Bank is definitely providing a lending hand to us in order to be able to really achieve what we want to get there. Many of the services and products that they are affording to African countries, they've exhibited some of them today, briefed us, and maybe they could brief even more for those who would want more in-depth information. I think it is serving as an important tool for the speedy movement towards a continental free trade area. And with it, the borders will collapse, the thick borders will collapse, and if we need to, until we manage to break these borders and bring them down, then maybe for the time being we can start working on building a bridge between Cape to Alexandria. I think the bridge is Kenya in all ways, because Kenya is not only in terms of location, not only in terms of economy, as I said, not only in terms of facilities and services, but also the entrepreneurship that I found in this country that I think is very inspiring and would make this country take leapfrogs in achieving development and prosperity. I thank you. I would like to finally say that I'm looking forward to seeing as many of you in the next fair, and then the following one, hopefully I'll be also attending it, but here in Nairobi. I thank you.
Round of applause for the ambassador one more time. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I know it's very sad, but we've come to the end of our morning session. It's been an honor to serve as your moderator for the morning session, so thank you again for the wonderful opportunity. Thanks again to our distinguished speakers and the panelists. Round of applause. And thank you too for being very interactive and active throughout the morning session. So round of applause for you. Viva Africa, viva! Viva Africa, viva! Thank you so much. This conversation continues. It doesn't end here. Hashtag IATF. And I hope that we continue to learn from one another. So this is your opportunity to network. Thank you so much. Asante sana. God bless you.
We're lifting up, nothing holds us bound. Can you see it? The light of Africa is rising to higher grounds. We're lifting up, nothing holds us bound. So come on and come on, we call on. Oh, Africa, come let us build a dream for all. Together we will stronger.
Is it? Oh, no, it's on.
Ni mtoto wa Kiafrika, kazaliwa rangi nyeusi, mwerevu tena shupavu. Mimi mwana wa udongo, kamili ya uwezo wa kesho.